right, everyone. Hello and welcome to tonight's election coverage, our first major coverage of the 2022 elections. Amazing it's already here. Really excited to have you. We've got a small team tonight, just me and Joe, but we're going to keep you posted on everything that's going on. If you're watching from YouTube or from Twitter, we're streaming on Twitter now as well for our Twitter followers. But you can only comment on YouTube. So if you want to comment, ask us questions during the show, got to do it on YouTube. We're not going to be paying attention to the Twitter. It doesn't really work like that, but I'll go ahead and throw it to Joe. He'll kind of go into what we're talking about. The polls close in Texas in about 30 minutes. That's when we'll start getting the first of our results, and we'll just roll from there.
Yeah, so really there are a couple of key races, both statewide and in congressional races, that we are really looking to tonight, because these are really the first signs of primaries that we're going to see. Remember, Texas does theirs differently than most other states in which the primary season, we will have these regular primary elections here in March today. But if a candidate in a primary, if no candidate gets over 50% in any primary race, that means we will head to a runoff that will occur in May. That would occur with any other runoffs that we would see. So that's really kind of what we're looking for today, is where are the key primaries, and is there a candidate there that can get to 50% and then avoid a runoff? Obviously, one of the big ones that we've talked about and that's been talked about a lot is the Republican primary for Attorney General. Current incumbent Attorney General Ken Paxton is pretty heavily under siege from people across the country. He has three key candidates against him. Current Land Commissioner George P. Bush, grandson of George H.W. Bush and son of Jeb Bush. You also have Eva Guzman, who's a justice on the Texas Supreme Court. And you also have, in what was a surprising move, current Texas 1st District Congressman Louis Gohmert is also part of the run. So that's really a key big thing here when we're looking at it right now. Right now, polling has seen Paxton in the lead in polling, but no polls have shown him above 50% with all four candidates in the race. From what we've heard, we do not expect Ken Paxton to go above 50% tonight. We expect him to head to a runoff. It is very likely that George P. Bush right now is considered the favorite to get against him into second place in the runoff. Eva Guzman has potential. It would be a real shock if it would be Louis Gohmert who would be the candidate in the runoff against Paxton. But really the key thing here is that, like I said, does Paxton finish under 50%? And if he does finish under 50%, who is the candidate against him? Both Bush and Guzman have been spoken of favorably by people in the Republican Party. Bush or Guzman, people say they would expect to potentially overtake Paxton in the May runoff. This is definitely one of the more high-profile ones, and definitely something that we're going to be looking for tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's worth noting that that Gohmert is running on an explicitly anti-Paxton platform. He actually spoke positively of, I think, Guzman and Bush. He basically said, to the extent, vote for someone that's not Ken Paxton. We would be surprised if Ken Paxton avoids a runoff. Obviously, this is the really, really interesting one of the night, probably the biggest one on the Republican side. Got a lot of heavyweights in there. We're really going to be paying attention to the Rio Grande Valley. That's where Guzman is from. She has a lot of support from Republicans down there, but also Bush. George P. Bush is very well known, very well supported in the Hispanic community in South Texas. Both of them are very, very positively received by a lot of new voters down there in the Republican primaries and throughout the state. So, we're going to be keeping a really close eye on a lot of regions, but we would be expecting this to go to a runoff for sure, unlike another race that we'll be mentioning.
Yeah, so, and I'll go into that, which is the GOP primary for governor. Obviously, Governor Greg Abbott has come under some criticism from far-right reaches of the Texas Republican Party for, certain, steps taken during the pandemic and other steps throughout his second term of governor. But we do not expect, from our sources, again, we do not expect the governor to fall under 50% as primary. Most polls have shown him in the 60 to 70% range.
Mm-hmm.
The two biggest candidates that we've seen against him are Allen West, who was now the former chairman of the Texas Republican Party, and also a former congressman from Florida's 22nd district. How that matches up, you ask, you tell me. And we also have Don Huffnes, who is a businessman and was also a former state senator who lost his seat in the blue wave year of 2018. Huffnes has been kind of the more out there candidate. He's the one who's of the challengers raised the most money. He's been spending a lot on ads. Polling hasn't necessarily translated to that though. He's routinely behind Allen West in third place. Again, even in a Trafalgar poll, which doesn't necessarily always like candidates, incumbents like Abbott, I believe that still showed him at around 60 to 65%, is somewhere in that range in a Trafalgar poll that was released today. So again, it would be a real shock if Abbott was forced to run off. He'll likely be fine in this event. That's not really, we're going to get confirmation of that early, we hope, but it's definitely going to be something to listen to here. And then we're going to move on to the Democrats here. This is something maybe to look forward to here tonight for Democrats. The lieutenant governor's primary in Texas is closely contested between three candidates. Michelle Beckley, who's a state legislator from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then two officials from their state Democratic Party in Carla Brady, who is the vice chair, and Mike Collier, who's the finance chair. Collier has the most backing from state legislators. He's probably the favorite, but there are strong questions about whether this goes to a runoff tonight. That'll be something that's interesting there. We don't expect that race to necessarily be as competitive as it was in 2018. Obviously, that's not something that we expect here. But I also do want to give a pass to the Texas Railroad Commissioner primary on the GOP side. People are talking to us that Wayne Christian, who's the incumbent Republican there, is certainly in danger of potentially falling to a runoff tonight and being primary by one of the many candidates he has accrued in that race. So that is a lesser known race, but something that is still important, something that is definitely interesting to watch tonight of an incumbent who could go down tonight or who could face definitely a threat of going down tonight by being forced into a May runoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those are some really interesting ones that at the sort of the top of the level. We're also following congressional district races, congressional district primaries. I'll go ahead and pull up a map here, since you guys like maps. I've got it loaded up in DRA here. We can kind of go into some of the details about these races, about what we're looking for, and just kind of go into some of the more competitive districts here. So this is the new congressional map Texas has passed. As you'll notice from pulling up the results, very, very Republican map. It's got a new Republican seat in South Texas, the 15th. Both of the other seats could be feasibly competitive in a Republican year. And it's got a lot of new districts, including a new Republican district in Harris County that's receiving a lot of attention. So again, I'll go ahead and throw it to Joe, and I'll pull up the really interesting congressional ones we're following and just kind of give you a rundown of the district while we talk about it.
Yeah, first we're going to give a quick pass over to the first district. Eric, if you could zoom in there on the first district. This is the one that's being taken, like we said, we talked about, is being voided by Louis Gohmert. Usually this would be a race that would be incredibly competitive in a primary, but from what we've heard and from what we've seen, Republican judge from Smith County, Nathaniel Moran, has for the most part cleared out the field. From our source in Texas, from kind of who has some years in this district, he has said that he expects Moran to win this race pretty heavily. That sometimes happens in these safe seats. Sometimes they can be, crazy primaries, which we'll talk about one very soon. But sometimes a really good candidate who's from, he's from Tyler. He's from Smith County, which hosts Tyler, which is the biggest county in the district. It's going to be very interesting to see right here, what's going to happen here tonight, but we expect Moran to be the Republican nominee and in this seat, which is a Trump plus a whole lot seat.
Trump plus 46.
Trump plus 46 seat. So that's a Trump plus a whole, that's a R, as my good friend Mark would say, R plus big number seat for this type of map. So Moran would be then the expected congressman from this seat, which I think some would agree on potentially all sides of the aisle might be an upgrade over Gohmert, considering Gohmert's controversialness as a candidate. But now, Eric, I'm going to pass on here to the third district. This is one that if we want to talk about some surprise potential, it's probably this one. The third is one that was drawn from a Trump from mid-single digit seat to now a Trump plus 14 and a half seat in 2020. This is a lot of Collin County and then some outer rural parts from what is that county? I believe right now Hunt County.
I believe it's Hunt County.
So it's mostly Collin County, but there are most of Hunt County is in the seat to cancel out the parts of Collin County. But also, it should be said, this is probably one of the wider swings. Like I said, it's a Trump plus 14 and a half seat, but it is a Cornyn plus 21 seat. Yes, Cornyn plus 21 seat. So they like their down ballot Republicans here still very much so. Van Taylor has come under some criticism for the way he votes in these seats. This is kind of the risk when you do stuff like this, when you're in redistricting, when you sometimes make a seat safer. Sometimes you call on the controversy, but surprisingly, it's not from Hunt County that we're expecting Taylor's potential biggest competition to be tonight. There's a lot of talk around, I believe his name is Keith Self. I believe that's his name here. If I check here, yes, Keith Self. He was a former Collin County judge. He's someone who does have name recognition inside the county. Taylor has a false but conspiracy theorist spread thing about a sex scandal. I'm not going to go into it. It was proven false relatively quickly after it came out, but he does have that spreading around some far right circles. But otherwise, really, the big issue here for Taylor is kind of the fact that Self does have this good name rec. He comes from Collin County. This is still very much a Republican seat. It's trending left, but like I said, down ballot especially, it's definitely a Republican seat. It's going to be really interesting to see where we go and if we see a surprise tonight in a primary. I would say that the 3rd district is one to look at here.
Mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon to see pretty major swings towards Cornyn's direction of these suburban seats. The 32nd is actually another example of this. You'll notice the seat has a lot of these. Those went into the Beth Van Dyne's seat. So let me pull up Beth. That's probably the better example here. Is the 24th. So that's only a Trump plus 12 seat, but it's also a Cornyn plus 21 seat. A lot of these areas in North Dallas and in these suburban areas voted more for Cornyn by very, very large numbers than the rest of the state overall did. So that's
So, and then really the big GOP primary of the night, we're going to want to go over to the new 8th district that's being vacated by Kevin Brady. This, you can see here, takes in kind of that northwest tip of Harris County and then goes far reaching out into some big rural counties here. This is a very safe Republican seat. Trump plus around 20, 26, 27. Cornyn plus 29, almost plus 30. This is a very Republican seat. Doesn't move a whole lot. Like I said, even though it does take in those parts of Harris County there, the other Republican parts are so rural. It's just a very Republican seat. Kevin Brady's retiring here in this seat. There are 2 main candidates that we see here that are likely to advance to the runoff. This has basically become a proxy war between Dan Crenshaw and Ted Cruz, who behind the scenes have both kind of been grappling to become the face of the Texas Republican Party. Crenshaw is backing a fellow former Navy SEAL, Morgan Luttrell, who has also gotten endorsements from Rick Perry and Dan Patrick, who's the current lieutenant governor. That's going to be very interesting. He's backed by the Congressional Leadership Fund, Main Street Republicanship. He would be your typical Republican for this seat. But in second place, you have Christian Collins. He is backed by Ted Cruz. He was a former Cruz aide. Collins has also certainly gotten endorsements from some controversial characters, though. He has endorsements from characters such as Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mike Lindell, and someone who's been in the news for all the wrong reasons recently, and Wendy Rogers, the state senator from Arizona, who was just censured today by basically everyone in the Arizona State Senate. So this is an interesting proxy war, not only ideologically, but also inside Texas. Most people believe this is going to a runoff tonight. This would be one we would be surprised to not see a runoff between Luttrell and Collins, and I think Eric would probably agree with me on that regards. We'd be surprised to see any candidates not named Luttrell or Collins gain most of the support tonight. They're by far the best funded. They're by far the ones who have the most endorsements. It's going to be really interesting to see who finishes in first tonight and what that could mean for the runoff in May. I know there's kind of an idea that, the person who finishes in second place seems to be the most likely to get the first. That's not always the case, especially in congressional primaries. Sometimes the candidate who finishes in first, blazes out and comes, just kind of takes that momentum and runs with it, and sometimes they don't. This does kind of feel like a situation because of some of the controversy surrounding Collins. He called Adam Kinzinger a traitor, which, while I know some of you that would think that'd be a response to the Republican Party nowadays, that's not necessarily a response to people from veterans, like he was speaking in a room full of veterans. They don't necessarily take kindly to people who serve the country calling them a traitor. This certainly does feel like a race where if Luttrell finished in first place, he could kind of take that momentum and ride with it. But really, that's what we're watching for here in the 8th district.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth noting this district, while this does have rural portions, Montgomery County is actually one of the remaining bastions of this suburban, college-educated Republicanism. The portions has obviously it doesn't have the most adjacent Republican areas, but as far as large counties, this is a county with over 620,000 people. This gave Donald Trump in 2020 71% of the vote, which is a lot of the vote. And in terms of raw vote margin, it's 120,000 more votes than Joe Biden. That is one of the largest in terms of a county raw vote margins for any Republican county in the country. It's right up there. So this is the sort of Republican county that not only is kind of staying, it's getting more and more intensely Republican, kind of like Union County in North Carolina, Johnston County, a lot of other, probably the collar counties and around Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
that's a good one right there. So this is a really interesting area to look at because it does kind of give a look into sort of that wing of the GOP that's kind of withstood the Trump wave and is more or less staying put as to where it's at. Not that Democrats haven't gained; they've gone from losing this county by 80 points to losing it by closer to 71 to 27 margin. But I digress. It's a really interesting area. I'm going to be real. This is the one I'm really looking at. I think this is going to be a fascinating primary and look at kind of the future of the Texas Republican Party, but especially the Harris County wing, which is in a pretty decent shape right now, actually, overall. Republicans in Texas are pretty excited about their chances in Harris County. So
yeah, it's a very interesting thing that Harris County has become a more potentially favorable place to Republicans than Dallas or the Fort Worth area could be potentially in the future.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out there about Montgomery. This is kind of the end. I would also include the Pittsburgh collar counties in this here. The difference between suburban and exurban areas. When you have big counties like Harris, and again, I think like Allegheny back in Pennsylvania. Their suburbs of their cities are sometimes controlled within that county, and then kind of the counties that go around it. It's not like Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia is basically one big city as its county, and then its suburbs actively go into other counties. Harris and Allegheny, Pittsburgh and Houston fit within the borders of their county, and then it spreads out more from the county. When you come to counties like Montgomery or even Westmoreland, those are significantly more exurban now than suburban. There are certainly some suburban parts. There are certainly some suburban parts of places like Beaver and Butler and even some parts of east of western Westmoreland. And I would say that for Montgomery too. But most of the counties are more exurban in nature, which have significantly different politics than suburban counties. I would say, my hometown, area of Elizabethtown is more like an exurb of, you could call it either an exurb of either the Harrisburg or Lancaster or Lancaster city area. It's more of an exurb. It's significantly more white. It's not necessarily growing as fast. And there's a lot more connections to, there's more rural areas in the counties. And, it's significantly more religious than maybe some of these other suburban counties are.
Long and short of it is these are really, really interesting places to look at and pay attention to. These are the sort of counties where Democrats can gain 5 to 10% in the vote, but at the rate the counties are growing, Republicans still gain in raw vote margin, which is a pretty interesting paradox if you think about it. The race is technically getting closer in terms of percentage, but in terms of margin of victory, the actual raw votes, it's getting wider. That's something to kind of pay attention to. But that's the Republican side of our races here. I think we don't have any more major Republican primaries. What do we got on the Democratic side?
Well, I think we want to start with the one that we all have talked about and we all know about. Let's go to the 28th district, the new Rio Grande Valley to Bexar suburb seat. This is the prime primary of the night, folks. The rematch between Henry Cuellar and Jessica Cisneros. this is the type of primary fight we have gotten to expect here across the country, and now it has come here to Texas. The blue dog Democrat versus the upstart progressive. It's usually a male versus female race. We've got that aspect here tonight. Cisneros came eerily close to knocking off Cuellar in 2020. She came only about 4 points off. It was a 52-48 race in 2020. I will say this race does have potentially a slight significant slight chance of going to a runoff. There is a minor third candidate in this race, and if the votes between Cuellar and Cisneros are really close, theoretically, if that third candidate gets enough of the votes, that could see neither Cuellar nor Cisneros get under 50% of the vote. That would be a bit. I will not lie to you, people. That would make for a very interesting last 2.5 month run spell, and that would potentially spell some issues here. We have to remember now. Going up here, this is only a Biden +8, seat. Some of the trends in some of these Rio Grande seats, and you look at some of the counties they took in as well. If you can zoom in a little bit more there, Eric, if you can look at some of these counties here for us here, you see some of the favorite ones. Starr County, big swing toward Donald Trump. Zapata County, big swing for Jim Hall County, big swing towards Donald Trump.
Went from D +57 to Democrat +18.
Yeah. You keep going up. I believe is that Laredo there on the side there. Webb County, but it's still
D plus Democrat plus almost 50 to Biden +24.
Yeah, and then you also, but now it takes in some key red counties now too. McMullen is a small Tecose is a bigger but still Republican county, and then and then it goes into the red parts of Guadalupe up there, which are mostly Republican parts, and then it goes into Bexar County. Takes in some very Democratic parts, and it takes in some very Republican parts. All that adds up to about a Biden +8 seat, and only a Hagar +5 seat, which is let's be. I'm going to be very clear here. That is crazy. That a seat that takes in a good chunk of Rio Grande counties is only a Democrat +5 seat, especially with some of the counties it took in. I think there is a risk here if this does go to a runoff tonight. This is a race. That's something that could really bloody up this primary, and could really potentially harm whoever would be the nominee. And let's not forget, Henry Cuellar is already under federal investigation by the FBI. That came out in mid-January. That's something that could potentially play a part here. Could be the thing that puts Cisneros over the line tonight. Be really interesting to see how people react to this. This seat is really kind of going to be the paradigm of how the Rio Grande Valley is acting in 2022, how those Hispanic voters are acting. It's going to be really interesting. This is almost 73% voting population Hispanic. Be really telling how we go here. Like the Republican nominee is Cassie Garcia, Hispanic female, worked for Ted Cruz. So, this is something, Republicans back here in 2020 ran a white candidate. They've got their message. They've got a Hispanic candidate. Hispanic females have been favored here by Republicans in these seats in now, especially after the success, almost near success that Monica de la Cruz had in 2020. She's back in Texas 15 for what is certainly going to be an interesting race there. This is really the key Democratic primary to watch tonight. This is going to be likely the star Democratic primary of the night, potentially the star primary of the night. It's going to be really fascinating to see where we go here with these races.
And it's worth noting, the old version of the seat was Biden +4, so this is actually a little bit of a benefit for Democrats. But on the other hand, Cuellar only won his race 15 points more than Biden. He won it by nearly 20 points, which is pretty telling. He is by far the most conservative Democrat left in the House, relatively pro-life, against gun control, voted against. One of the more important ones for progressive Democrats is he voted against the PRO Act. He's been a long favor of not just Democrats in Texas, but also Republicans in Texas. The establishment Republicans really, really like him. There's a reason Monica de la Cruz did a lot better in her race, and the Republican running against Vicente Gonzalez and in his district did a lot better. Or sorry, that one, and then the 34th district, I believe, did better against their Democratic candidates. Cuellar is one of those rare people who can pull over crossover voters in Texas. So if he falls here, not only are you losing that sort of thing for Democrats, pretty much a safe bet in the region, you're also potentially getting a progressive candidate who could alienate a lot of voters, more conservative, socially, maybe fiscally voters in the Rio Grande Valley. So we're going to be paying really close attention to this one. We expect this to be very, very competitive. Like Joe said, outside chance of a runoff here because there is a third candidate this time. Last time this race was, I believe, a 3-point win for Cuellar in his primary. 4 point. So, that this is really, really, I think, by far the one, maybe even of all the primaries tonight, this is the one most people are going to be paying attention to and keeping their eye on, because this is a genuinely competitive district with a genuinely competitive primary on the Democratic side, really kind of over the future of this region and how these certain districts sort of vote. I believe we have another district that has an open primary on the Democratic side.
We would like to go, if you could send us to the new 35th, the new Hispanic Opportunity seat that is goes from Austin down to parts, down through some Hispanic parts and down to San Antonio. This is the new Hispanic Opportunity seat that was drawn. Potentially a good decision to potentially avoid some potential VRA conflicts. As you can see there, it's about 51% Hispanic, which under the current rules we have does make it VRA compliant, I believe. It's a new opportunity seat. It's a safely Democratic seat, and it's doing its job because both the top three candidates are all Hispanics. Interesting here, Greg Cesar, strong progressive, and who's an Austin City Councilman. He is the prohibitive favorite here. He's been around 35 to 42% in the primary polls that we've seen so far, but that's not enough to clear a primary. If you want to look at here where you're kind of looking for here for, well, who would be the person to go against him here? Right now we have Eddie Rodriguez, who is a current, I believe he is a current state representative from the Austin area. He's come out with some very interesting ads. If you saw it on social media, it was the most interesting man in Austin ads, which are certainly a different way to look about it. But there is also, though, Rebecca Viagran, who is a former member of the San Antonio City Council. She could be able to if she gets enough votes from the San Antonio part in Bexar County, that not only could that be enough to force Cesar into a runoff, but it could also be enough to vault her in the second place. That I would think would probably set up a potentially more interesting race in kind of this, we do have this kind of weird, Austin certainly makes up a significantly more part of the population in this seat, but it would certainly set up a more interesting narrative here. Kind of those non-Austin parts versus the heavily Austin parts of the district. It would certainly, could potentially set up like how Florida's 5th is right now, whereas the Jacksonville versus Tallahassee parts, Jacksonville usually wins out because of the significant, the larger part of the population and its surrounding areas are in that district. This could kind of be a similar way we could see this district act throughout the decade when it comes to Democratic primaries. When you're kind of going between two cities like that to build a VRA seat, you kind of get that dynamic sometime. But this is certainly something interesting to watch. Says, Cesar, Greg Cesar. It's not Cesar, Greg Cesar. It's certainly a mishap on my part there. I apologize. But Cesar is certainly favored. It could certainly still possible he avoids a runoff tonight. It doesn't really have the same dynamics as, say, the 28th would if it goes to a runoff, though. Like I said, this is a very, very safe Democratic seat. Joe Biden got around 70% of the vote here. Most of these precincts are blue, except for that one little string to connect it to the San Antonio area. So, it's going to be very interesting to see here. But, folks, we are officially 30 seconds from polls closing in the state of Texas. We are about to go live here as we prepare to get ready for the first primary cycle of 2022 is a go. And I can now confirm that polls have closed across the state of Texas tonight. It is now 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Texas time, Central time. Polls have closed across the state of Texas as we prepare now for massive, massive result as we prepare now for key results across the country, in primaries across Texas. We now prepare
Mm-hmm.
for the first election night of 2020. Here we are, 2022, folks. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
And if you've just joined our stream, I'll go ahead and post the link again. We have the election results live, updating on our website with data from Decision Desk HQ, who we are partnered with, and who's really really helpful for us in a lot of ways, more than one. On the website, you can find them there. We got the embeds. If I could go ahead and screen share it so you can kind of see what we can do here, and we'll be doing more of this as the night goes on, of course. But you can see here, we've got the results live showing up on the page. We got the county results for the governor races, all sorts of stuff going on. Really exciting. Definitely give it a look. It's the link is in the comments on Twitter. I posted the link on Twitter as well under our original tweet thread for those of us watching there. So be sure to click on that and keep it going as the night goes on. It's going to be really fun, I think.
Yeah. So as we wait now, we are now officially waiting for first results from Texas. Polls they have closed in Texas. So we are now just waiting for the first results. We don't necessarily know where they'll come from. We don't necessarily know where they'll be from. Early vote certainly a option here, but we certainly expect to see most, if not all, of the votes before midnight tonight Eastern time. Very excited here to be here with you guys tonight. It feels like it's been a while, but it's technically only been 4 months since we last did one of these in Virginia. Now officially almost 4 months ago now, since we had our last one. But here we go. The months of primaries are beginning. Eric, what are kind of some, especially if you're looking at statewide, either in Republican or Democratic Party, what are some key counties that you think our viewers should be looking for if they're following along these results with us?
So the big counties in Texas are probably from what we called the Texas Triangle. This is the rough, if you basically take the state of Texas, I'll pull up the map here again, and I'll just get rid of the election results so you can just see the state and how it looks. Remove the map colors and everything, remove the district colors. And to show you what we kind of, what I'm talking about here is in political science and political theory in general, there's this region called the Texas Triangle, which basically stretches from Dallas up here, that's the north end of the triangle, down through Austin, Bayard County right here, that's the left end of the triangle, and then down to Harris County right here, that's the right end of the triangle. So basically, if you were to just make a very sloppy line, I don't even know if it's going to let me do this live, but oh yeah, because it's not showing the map colors. Yep. So basically, it's from here all the way up to here, and then from here, that's the triangle. So these are the most populated counties in Texas. The majority of the state of Texas lives in the triangle. So on the Republican side, Harris County is going to be big, not only in terms of the candidates there, the races there, also in terms of which party outvotes the other. There have been rumblings of Republicans doing really, really well in Harris County, especially compared to other urban counties. This is with a very diverse population, with a heavy Hispanic population, a lot of white voters who are college educated, but a lot of also oil in the east side of Harris County in Hispanic areas. You could actually draw a majority Hispanic district there, VRA compliant Hispanic district that votes for Republicans. Those areas are really primed for Republican voters to gain. So, over the night, kind of the vote differential there. Obviously, Tarrant County is a big one, big suburban Republican county. Not a lot of competitive primaries there, but that Dallas County, Bayard County, also how the Rio Grande Valley counties vote. We expect these counties to still vote heavily Democratic in the primaries. Texas is a state that these areas are still predominantly Democratic in terms of who votes in primaries and registration. But there have been Republican gains in terms of turnout in South Texas. So we're going to basically keep an eye on how parties have gained and lost there. On the other hand, I would expect Democrats to be doing a little bit better around the Austin area, perhaps some of the suburban counties, north and south of Austin, of Travis County. Those would be ones I'd be really paying attention to and keeping a close eye on in terms of how they're voting and how they're contributing to the state as a whole. But really, for Republicans, I think Harris is going to be a pretty big indicator. And then obviously there's a slew of a bunch of rural counties, a bunch of exurban counties, and a bunch of smaller cities. People tend to forget about Texas is it's got a lot of cities, and it's got a lot of fairly big cities. It would be big cities in my state. I mean, you've got places like Midland, you've got Odessa, you've got Amarillo, all in the east, in the panhandle portion of the state. got Tyler, Texas, a big city, relatively speaking. I think it's like 200, 300,000 people or so in the county. College Station, all sorts of areas to pay attention to. It's a really big state, basically. And so a lot of areas, I would say, would be what we want to be keeping a close eye on. But those are the ones I'll be paying the closest attention to, I would say.
Yeah, that's for sure. This is going to be something that's going to be really fascinating to watch all night. If you have any questions in the chat for us, especially as we start to see results come in, don't be afraid to ask them throughout the night. We will try to answer them as best we can. We will, of course, try and ask you to try and keep it focused on Texas tonight. That's what we would ask you to do, is to try and keep it focused on Texas tonight. So whether you're watching from our YouTube or from our Twitter, and if you want to come from the Twitter and join us on YouTube, that'd be awesome too. Please give us also a like and subscribe to the channel. We have a weekly podcast live every Thursday night, hosted by me, Eric, and our good friend Dylan Wade, who's our left-wing contributor to that event there, so that way we get a little bit more of that partisan balance. You obviously don't want to just hear me, Eric, talk all the time. It was also too bad we can't have Kraz Greinetz with us tonight, but he is celebrating his 23rd birthday tonight, of course. So happy birthday to Kraz. He's been one of our top contributors and editors and election analyzers since we started the website now over 2 years ago. So happy birthday, Kraz. Hope you're enjoying your 23rd birthday tonight. And we are getting our first results. We're seeing some stuff from the Democratic primary, and as expected, Beto O'Rourke jumps out to a big lead in the Texas Democratic primary for governor. That is certainly not to be unexpected tonight. He has jumped into a pretty massive lead here, as we expect tonight. Again, this is not a primary we were watching. O'Rourke was the more than expected favorite for this race here. It's going to be really interesting to see how this is definitely not something that we were interested in looking at tonight, that's for sure. And we also have our first results from the Republican primary. Greg Abbott, far out into the lead right now. I don't necessarily know where these results are coming from, but he has 73% of the vote right now. In the first right now, Alan West is in second with 10% of the vote, and Don Huffney's is in third. Those are pretty clearly where the votes are coming from right now. And I saw in the chat, it looks like we might have some numbers potentially from the 28th district. So let me go check there as we look for those numbers. Eric, I'm sure you're checking along with me right now.
Yep.
But yes, and it looks like it's mostly from Webb County here.
Cisneros. As we said before, big Democratic county, but not as Democratic.
No, it's not from Webb County. Excuse me, they're not from Webb. Are they potentially from Bexar? They are. They are from Bexar County. So this was the area that we expected Cisneros to be good in early. This is not a surprise by any means here. What we're seeing early on in this race here, that is certainly not a surprise by any means. We are looking specifically here. Of course, we have our great link from our great friends, our new overlords, not necessarily new anymore, but our overlords at Decision Desk HQ have graciously provided the results from us on our coverage. Eric, as we continue to get more in here, if you wouldn't mind putting those in the box, that would be awesome.
Just a second here. I'm trying to fix an issue on the website real quick, and or maybe it's just in Safari that's having the problem. Yes, I guess you're seeing it just fine on your end.
Okay, Eric, I have something potentially interesting for you.
Go for it.
According to Decision Desk HQ and our results right now, in District 17, with about 4% of the votes in, likely from a small part of the county, but Pete Sessions, who came over here and carpetbagged, of course, in 2020, he has a couple of candidates. He has about 4 candidates priming against him. He is currently under 50% of the vote with about 4% in. Wow. He's only at 48% right now. We said there are always surprises in these type of races. Could Pete Sessions be our surprise tonight? Eric, I'm sure if you would like to tweet that out, I'm sure some of our supporters some of our followers and listeners would love to see some of that as we go into tonight right now. I'm sure some of our folks would love to hear about that. But that is very interesting right now. According to Decision Desk HQ, Pete Sessions right now, below 50% of the vote right now as we get into that race.
That's pretty fascinating. That's, he did carpetbag in that seat. That's not a seat that he was originally from. That's a seat that he moved to after he, of course, lost his race in 2018, one of the Democratic wave defeats, I believe it was.
Yep.
So yeah, that's really interesting. That's definitely a start so far, I would think.
Yeah. So we're right now. I'm going to check where these results are coming from right now in this race.
And of course, we got our. You can also see the Attorney General primary results so far as well. If you click on the Attorney General, scroll down through here, you can see those so far. I believe right now. Oops, just a second to look at this. I just wanted to go to county results. Ken Paxton right now, based on these two counties, Bayard County and Williamson, is about 45% of the vote, 46%, with Eva Guzman in second place, and then George P. Bush in third, with Louis Gohmert in the third, pulling up the rear at about 14% so far.
Very interesting, right? We expected Gohmert to be finishing in last place. Again, this battle might, if we looking for a runoff right now, again, it looks like what we might be looking for is potentially, who's in second? Is it Guzman or is it Bush?
Mm-hmm. And that is right below that threshold of what it would take to avoid a runoff. So that's pretty important and pretty interesting result to start out with.
Absolutely, for sure. So already potentially some news right now here. Of course, again, if we want to talk about, Eric, if you could bring up I know you were on the site, so if you could bring up the 28th District House primary. Again, while Jessica Cisneros is out early, we want to, again, highlight these votes are coming from Bayard County. These are the more, this is the part of the primary group that is almost certainly more favorable to Cisneros. We do want to remind that none of the Rio Grande Valley seats have come in yet. It looks like all the vote currently stands to come from Bayard County. Very different types of seats here right now. Otherwise, this is the type of night we're looking at right now. Not really seeing necessarily any surprises yet. But, obviously there's still certainly lots and lots of stuff to come out for the rest of the night here as we continue to watch and see what's going on throughout the state. And I want to jump in now back, according to Decision Desk HQ, Ken Paxton still in the lead here with around 44% of the vote, but George P. Bush has now jumped ahead of Eva Guzman as more of those results come in. And Greg Abbott continues to be pretty heavily in the lead, as well as Dan Patrick. Those were not really primaries you're looking for tonight. I'm also going to take a quick look here, as we don't want to just lessen our friends, the Democrats here. Take a quick look here. Very little insofar reporting from the lieutenant governor's primary in Texas for the Democrats, but Mike Collier with the early lead as we expected. And again, Braley and Beckley very close together. We expected Collier to be the top candidate. The question is, does he get forced into a runoff with either Collier or Beckley, Braley or Braley or Beckley? Does he get forced into a runoff there? That's really something to potentially look for tonight as well here as we continue to get in numbers from these seats. Very interesting to see across the country here. And I do want to touch now on the first district primary here. We do have Nathaniel Moran, as expected, with about 4% of the vote in, pretty heavily in the lead right now. Joe McDaniel is in second, but Moran has 62.8% of the vote to McDaniel's 26.8. Like I was told, we kind of expected that seat to be the one right now where not to be pretty heavily for Moran. So right now, no surprises yet within that race. So we haven't seen really any surprises yet, except for the fact that Sessions is still down right now. It's saying now that's up to 44% of the vote. No, that's just in Williamson, excuse me, for Republican primaries. Excuse me, I was looking at the wrong thing there. My bad, folks. But something to keep an eye on right now, folks. Again, Pete Sessions. We might be looking at a surprise here tonight. Want to keep an eye on the GOP primary potentially in the 17th district. Pete Sessions currently down below 50% right now. Something potentially to keep your eye on for the night. Pete Sessions, again, the current Republican incumbent from a relatively Trump-heavy seat, the 17th district, is at the moment below 50% of the race. This was a seat he carpetbagged to in 2020 for the run in 2020 after he lost in the blue wave of 2018. So certainly something still to pay attention to right now, folks. Right now, if we want to look for a surprise, that might be it right now. Pete Sessions, really looking at it right now here as where we're kind of going here for things.
And one thing I'd like to mention, which is we'll be paying attention to, obviously this is just early, but right now, Gomer is in fact leading in a county. He's leading in his own region. I believe this is Rusk County in East Texas. That's right by his home in Tyler. So that's going to be really, that'll be interesting to see if he does manage to carry some of those counties in that region of Texas, around Tyler. That's a lot of Republican votes in the primary. East Texas isn't the most populated part of the state, but it's enough to get a substantial chunk of votes, in a statewide race, I would think.
Absolutely. That is for sure. Definitely do not underestimate that potential. That is for sure when it comes to that race. We are about 16 minutes in to items tonight. Again, we want to thank our great friends and overlords at Decision Desk HQ for continuing to support us with results tonight. We continually and really appreciate that tonight. As always, we always do, and we continue to appreciate them giving us their results as something to look at tonight for sure. As we continue to kind of go into this primary season here, haven't seen any results reported yet in any of the interesting primary and statewide primaries. I haven't seen anything reported there as we continue to go on here, as we kind of have a little bit of a lull in results across the state. But again, if we want to go into an update here, Greg Abbott continues to be significantly in the lead here, according to Decision Desk HQ, 72 to 10% right now over his next rated challenger right now. Unsurprisingly, it has been a relatively successful night right now for the incumbent governor. That was not a race we expected to be competitive in any shape or form tonight. So, right now, we're just really waiting for some more votes to come in from key areas. Right now, I think we're mostly seeing from not necessarily the most populous areas from either from major counties. And I'm guessing a lot of this right now is probably some early vote. And I do want to point out now, we just got a big update in here from Decision Desk HQ here. If we look at some of these major counties here around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Greg Abbott doing very, very well in the Republican primaries in Tarrant and its surrounding counties. According to Decision Desk HQ, he has over 110,000 votes over on his next highest candidate in Don Huffney's now has taken the second place finish, but he's at 71% of the ballot race there. That's kind of that's potentially a rough little start there for Don. This was a race that was hyped up by people online. That certainly doesn't seem to be taking the case right now here, that we're seeing any of these seats really become anywhere near competitive right now. So something that's certainly still interesting to watch right now. We've certainly got a long way to go here still for sure. Abbott certainly, after being very heavily raised against, that certainly does not take any trouble here. That's for sure here. If anything, it shows how strong the governor's campaign kind of is right now when it comes to these areas and these races here. And as we continue to get more votes in here, looking across the country here, we still have not gotten any votes in from the new 8th district or the 38th district. So we're still waiting on those races for sure. In the Republican side, we have no votes yet from the new 8th district. No update yet for you guys on the 28th yet. Those new numbers have not come in. We're looking as well. 34, surprisingly, Vicente Gonzalez was facing some primary challengers. But right now he's hovering around 60% of the vote right now in that new 34th district. So it does not look like there'll be a shock runoff for him. I'm going to also point our attention to the 30th here. Jasmine Crockett is looking to replace, AD Bernice Johnson in this safely Democratic seat. Bernice Johnson, in fact, endorsed Crockett. But she's only around 56% of the vote right now. I don't necessarily, I believe that's probably coming from Tarrant County, and it is. That's certainly the lesser part of the seat here. So we need to probably wait for results from Dallas to see there. That's probably the type of sign, though, that that I would guess that Crockett wants to see in that race. I would say for sure that is certainly what she would want to see in this race here as we continue to go on through the night now. That's certainly the type of numbers that she would want to see here coming from these seats. Again, I just want to point attention again here. 17th right now, surprisingly, Pete Sessions. Still, again, kind of the early surprise here in the night so far. Still down below 50% of the vote right now or some of the early votes there. Very interesting to watch here. Definitely interesting to see right now as we continue to go on throughout the night. But it looks like right now that the interesting thing here is that we potentially have results in from the Houston Metro, some of the early votes in from there in the Attorney General's race. Eva Guzman, very, very close to Ken Paxton in that race. Something certainly to watch as once we get those results officially in, something certainly to watch. It's certainly starting to feel like, though, that especially according to our source, that we should expect this race looks like it's starting to head to a runoff, and I think Eric would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. That's the direction it seems to be trending as well right now.
Yeah, so we're really kind of just continuing to watch here. Again, really some of the key focuses continues to be that 28th District Democratic primary. Cisneros versus Cuellar right now. Something very interesting for sure as we continue to move on into this race. We're also, again, continuing to wait on results from we have results from the 8th District according to Decision Desk H. We've got some of our first results here. Morgan, as expected, we're about where we are right now, folks. Morgan Luttrell in first place, Christian Collins in second place. Luttrell has around 42% of the vote, while Collins is around 37, with minor candidates right now taking in the rest of the way right now. We also do have Monica De La Cruz, as expected, leading pretty heavily in the 15th District to be the nominee there. That's really no surprise right now with what we have. Also interesting, in the 15th, Michelle Vallejo, who is the left-wing candidate for this seat. She's been endorsed by Elizabeth Warren and the Working Families Party of Texas right now. That's not a small field. It's very limited votes in, but she's in the lead there right now. And Cassie Garcia is in the lead right now in the 28th District, but basically she's leading with 23% of the vote. It certainly seems to look like right now the 28th is going to be heading to a runoff right now on the GOP side, at least. Certainly something interesting to watch out for there as we continue to go on right now. I'm going to take a look here at the 38th District. Wesley Hunt is the Republican favorite here. He leads right now over Mark Ramsey, 56-30 right now, with apparently, according to Decision Desk HQ, 75% of the vote in. I don't necessarily know how accurate that is, but that's certainly potentially where we're at with that right now. Hunt being forced into a runoff would be surprising, but he's hovering around 56% right now, which is probably exactly where he wants to be. Dan Crenshaw is dispatching with his opponents with relative ease right now. He has 79% of the vote. So any threat from the online right to Crenshaw has also been pretty successfully dispatched, you would say, going into the night right now. Pete Sessions we're still waiting on some more votes from District 17. That's kind of what we're looking for right now in a Republican primary. Nathaniel Moran, not much going on there. There are some Republican primaries happening in safe Democratic seats that we're going to not really be able to wait and see right now. And it looks like most other Republican incumbents are pretty easily dispatching with their primary challengers if they have one. Candidates like John Carter, Randy Weber, Troy Nehls, Michael Cloud are relatively with ease dispatching their primary candidates right now. Pat Fallon, surprisingly, is only at 58% right now, with apparently about 11% in from his district. We're also still waiting on the 3rd district right now. We are still waiting on results from the 3rd district in Decision Desk HQ. So that's not really necessarily a surprise here as we continue to look at it now.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, according to Decision Desk, at least, we're still waiting on results from the new 35th. So we're waiting there. This is starting to become an issue now, though, for Henry Cisneros. Henry Cuellar, excuse me.
Henry Cuellar, yeah.
Henry Cuellar. That is a bad mistake. I apologize, folks. But just Cisneros with 23% in. Again, we expect all this to be early vote, according to what we've heard. Up 71-21, almost 5,000 votes above Cuellar right now. Eric, I'm going to pose this question to you, but you have to wonder, has potentially some of the Latino vote switching, party switching potentially that we've heard is occurring in some of these Rio Grande Valley counties, do you think that might be hurting Cuellar right now in the Democratic primary performance?
It certainly could have a bit of an impact, but I wouldn't assume the numbers would be that substantial at the moment. I'd need to see how close it is towards the end, because right now, this race, this is one of the more important races we're paying attention to. If this is currently just, the margin it is right now, it's more than just party switching, I would think. I think it would have to be a little bit more than that. But, we'll need to see further. This is just all preliminary early votes. There's still a lot of vote left to come out. But I think it looks pretty good for Cisneros right now. I would, if we're looking at the counties here, I think Bayard County, obviously, it's got a let in, but I don't see a ton from Webb County or at least from Decision Desk or any of these other smaller Rio Grande Valley counties. So that would be kind of the ones I would be more interested in seeing how they vote relative to last time. I need to do a little bit of mental math there, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's for sure here. There's continually really interesting results here. It continues to look like as we continue to get votes in from the Attorney General's race. We're going to do a little quick update there as we get to that right now. Get a little quick update for you guys on the Attorney General's race. Republican primary. And again, this is interesting now. This is interesting. We've got those results in from Harris County into the ZDHQ lineup. Ken Paxton right now below 42% of the vote. Eva Guzman, the justice on the Texas Supreme Court, currently in 2nd place with 23%, 23.3% of the votes. George P. Bush in 3rd with 90% of the vote. And you made an earlier point about Go Mayor in some of these rural counties in his district. Certainly is turning out that way. He's won three counties that were.
He's winning 3 counties.
In those slightly populated, lesser populated Eastern Texas area. Very interesting to look at there. Beto O'Rourke continues to run away right now with the Texas gubernatorial nomination. The Texas nomination for Attorney General seems to be heading to a runoff. And it seems like we could start to say the same thing for the Lieutenant Governor's race. Mike Collier in first right now with about 41% of the vote. Carla Braley in second with around 30.7%. You got Michelle Beckley in third with 28% of the vote. That's starting to feel like it could be heading into runoff territory potentially for the Democrats for the lieutenant governor nomination here. For Republicans, it is starting to continually be more comfortable here as Greg Abbott continues to lead with 68% of the vote right now. As these large areas come in here, he's got estimated around 27% of the vote in that race. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, even safer. He's getting around almost 80% of the vote right now in his race primary. Not a whole lot of issues you'd have to say right now. For these
One
folks.
thing I would say, I know we were mentioning Rio Grande Valley. I was looking at other websites as well for some of the election results. And one thing I find interesting is Beto O'Rourke is winning the Democratic primary, obviously 93% of the vote right now. This is according to New York Times. But in Cameron and Hidalgo County, he's only at 81% of the vote. That's 12% less than the rest of the state. One of those places have in common back in 2018. Beto substantially underperformed other Democrats in the region. He underperformed Hillary Clinton in the region. That would seem to kind of have trended over here a little bit. If he's running 12 points behind, uh, his statewide performance, and there's in a race with no other major candidates, I would think that'd be fairly concerning for his. At least from that perspective, that's something I'd want to see from a region that Democrats are hoping is just a one-time fluke event.
Yeah, that is certainly the case right now. We're still waiting on some key results in other areas. I am looking at other websites right now. I'm right now looking at New York Times. They are reporting results for that 35th district primary Democratic primary. Greg Kazar, I'm going to guess these are mostly from Bear, because Greg Kazar is at 45% of the vote right now, but Rebecca Viagran is in second with about 30% of the vote right now. So I'm going to guess those results are mostly from Behar. We do not have them yet on decision desk. I'm sure those will be coming very, very quickly here. But I do want to go and take a quick look here over at the 8th. And yes, big news out of the 8th District GOP primary right now. Morgan Luttrell has jumped in ahead with now 53% of the vote. According to Decision Desk HQ, they're estimating around 69% of the vote is in. Big deal. Luttrell, we do not expect this. Luttrell right now currently would be avoiding a runoff right now. This is very interesting right now. Luttrell, that's mostly, I believe, from early voting plus absentee voting results from the GOP. That's a big deal right now. Luttrell, over 50% of the vote right now. That's a big deal. Very interesting to see that right now. He is again at 52.8%, 0.9% of the vote. Christian Collins at 23.8% of the vote. That is a big, big deal right there, one would have to say. That is kind of a more significant move here. And again, I want to push right now something that we're looking at right now here, which is the 3rd District GOP primary. No results there right now. I also want to point out right now, Jasmine Crockett in that House District 30 primary is below 50% right now. Jane Hamilton, who I believe was an Obama administration official, currently is in second place with around 20% of the vote right now. Be interesting to see if Crockett is forced into a runoff in that seat, especially with the endorsement of Eddie Bernice Johnson, the retiring congressman from that seat. So that is certainly something interesting to look at there as we kind of continue to go into this night here. Very, very continually interesting night here in and around Texas as we continue to look at some of these crucial states here as we get into the movement here. I also want to give a brief mention back to the 17th District Republican race right now. Pete Sessions back over 30% with around 63% of the vote right now. So Sessions, after maybe looking a bit struggling early on, back over the 50% mark. Maybe we potentially jumped the gun a little bit there on excitement for a primary. I do want to point out, though, that New York Times has some results from the 3rd District. Van Taylor, it's very, very limited vote. We're going to guess his early vote. Van Taylor hovering around 52% of the vote right now. Keith Self, the former Collin County judge, is at 30% of the vote right there. Something to watch at. Interesting to mention right now. It is not necessarily, again, we're talking about this 28th district. Again, it's only early vote, and it's only about 10,000 votes right now, and a substantial portion of that vote is from Bexar County. We're probably going to be here for potentially a while with that seat as we continue to see more and more of these results come in here. And I'm sure we're probably going to start to see some calls here soon as we get into the night. As we kind of get later and later night, we are now officially more than 30 minutes past poll closing here in some of these key races here. So, Eric, has anything surprised you so far tonight with what you've been seeing? Has anything surprised you so far?
Well, we mentioned earlier one of the counties we're going to be paying attention to is Harris County, but also in the 8th district is Montgomery County. So obviously this is a big district. Most of the votes are not in Harris County. Most of them are in those northern counties. In Harris, it's a pretty close race in the 8th district right now. Morgan Luttrell only has about 42% of the vote here compared to 37% for Christian Collins. But if you go to the other counties in the district, it's a different story. Montgomery County, he's pulling in 57% of the vote there. Dr. Collins is only barely ahead of Jonathan Houlihan, who no one was talking about in terms of this race, and that's had far more votes coming out of Montgomery County than out of Harris County. I think it's 29,000 votes is what they're estimating so far. Only 7.6 thousand from Harris compared to 22.2 thousand from Montgomery. So that's obviously pretty interesting there. That contrast between the urban more Democratic portion and the more Republican portion in Montgomery County. And then going to the 35th district, this is according to the New York Times, is Greg Casar is far and away leading that race. There's no results from decision desk yet, but according to New York Times, Casar is at 60% of the vote. Eddie Rodriguez and Rebecca Viagran, I apologize if I butchered that name, both at 16%. That's a substantial margin for Casar there.
Yeah, that's a big margin there. Like I said, if he got big numbers out of Austin, that would be the way he avoids kind of that primary runoff situation. Right now, it's certainly kind of starting to feel that way. If we're going to expect, that's probably where a lot of those votes are coming from right now for him. I would bet that's where most of those votes are coming right now for him. Are those those area seats right now? Again, going to be really interesting to see right now here. If we have any interesting runoffs to look at right now, come May, because right now it's not necessarily looking like it. Potentially the 30th district, Jasmine Crockett. The 15th district Democratic primary. Could we see a runoff there? Statewide stuff. It looks like the Attorney General's race on both sides seem to be slowly continuing to head towards a long step here for a runoff time, so another 2 months of campaigning. But I have to agree with you about Montgomery County. That's a massive margin for Luttrell. That's a really big deal, and that's something that's really interesting to see here as we continue to go in right now. It's going to be really fascinating to see. I do want to hear George P. Bush does have a lead in his first county right now. He beat Ken Paxton in the Hidalgo County early vote. 40-37. So that is just something to mention right now.
No, that's not entirely surprising. He's a favorite of the Hidalgo County Republican Party. They're big supporters of him there.
That is definitely for sure. And I'm going to try and take a look here. Decision Desk does not have these numbers, but the New York Times does, and they have some of the other Texas statewide races. I'm going to take a look here at the Railroad Commissioner, see if there are numbers from this race. And there are. Rain Christian right now, with 5% into that race, is currently ahead with around 58% of the vote right now. Sarah Stogner is in second with 12%. This is what we said we could look out for the outside here right now, but right now it's starting to look like that Christian will probably survive a primary here as we continue to go on to these nights here, at least from the first couple of votes that we're seeing. Going to continue to go down right now. Don Buckingham is in the lead by a wide margin in the race to replace Bush. Sid Miller pretty heavily in the lead for Agriculture Commissioner right now in some of the early vote there. So it doesn't seem like a whole lot happening right now. That side of the race. So
I will say we've gotten some. Sorry, we got some results from Smith County. Yeah, we got some results from Smith County, which is obviously, Tyler, Texas. That's Ken Paxton's neck of the woods. He has 62% of the vote so far in Smith County. That's his biggest lead and the only majority he has in the county so far. Obviously, though, it's worth noting a lot of the counties that are in right now are those East Texas counties where Ken Paxton will be doing a lot, or not Ken Paxton, where Louis Gohmert will be doing a lot better. Once more counties from South Texas, West Texas, Central, and then the Panhandle come in, I would suspect those numbers would go down a little bit for Louis Gohmert. For example, he's pulling double digits in a lot of these counties in the northern portions, Potter County, Moore County. He's not doing nearly as well in these areas, but far below his performance in these other counties where he is, in his neck of the woods. Even in the Dallas area, he's only pulling around, for example, in Tarrant, 18% of the vote, 13% in Dallas, 13% in Ellis, 14% in Rockwall. Compared to these larger margins, I would basically expect his numbers to go down a little bit in that area. But really, the 2 and 3 seems to be between Guzman and Bush. I would think this is probably most likely to go to a runoff at this point. Obviously, don't want to say anything for certain until we get our official call in. But I would say it's Guzman and Bush, and in particular, Guzman seems to be doing very well in a lot of areas you want to be doing well in statewide as a Republican in Texas.
That's very interesting right now. And I believe, yes, we have a little bit more results here from the 28th district primary. Henry Cuellar has cut the lead of Jessica Cisneros a little bit right now. The lead is down to 68-24, which that's not a whole lot, but that's at least a cut down lead. Yeah, that's because Cuellar is leading in the early vote from Jim Hogg County. He's winning that one 73-21 right now in Jim Hogg County. So that's one of those more kind of some of the ones that we saw swing in. So as we kind of have gotten, that's something interesting to watch now as we kind of see we get closer to the Rio Grande Valley areas. We see Cuellar doing a bit better. So that's certainly something to watch here as we continue on to the night right now. Cuellar doing potentially this is again. That's why we said we want to wait on that. See how Cuellar is doing in those Rio Grande Valley districts that are going to report later, and then some of the population areas, centered areas that we saw Cisneros do well in. That's definitely something to talk about here and pay attention to as we continue to move on right now on this night. I'm going to continue to be looking for a lot of different things right now. Again, just kind of looking around across the country as we look for. And I do want to point out right now, interestingly enough, according to the New York Times, in the 3rd district, in the Republican primary, Van Taylor is currently below 50% right now. Suzanne Harp has surprisingly gotten into second place, but that's because she's getting votes from the more conservative Hunt County. I believe that's where Harp is from. We're still missing, according to the New York Times, they're estimating still around 50,000 votes in Collin County compared to only 5,000 in Hunt. So, that's not necessarily a key look at here, but also I want to point out right now, Nathaniel Moran. Now, we talked about that Smith County drop. After that, he is up by wide margins now in his primary place in Louis Gomer. He's at 78% of the vote right now. It continues to look more likely that Nathaniel Moran, a Smith County judge, is likely to be the Republican nominee to replace Louis Gomer in the 1st congressional district in Texas. So, Eric, do you have any thoughts about that kind of in that regard?
I think that's pretty much expected from what we were talking about, that there wouldn't be a huge, and it's unusual because usually these open races tend to have a bit more competition in them, but sometimes they just don't, and you luck into a seat for quite a while. I know from my congressional district is back in 2004 when my seat opened up, which is the 10th district, that had a very contentious Republican primary. It went to about 3% of the vote. We've also seen this in other results in Texas as well, other places throughout the South. Usually these races are more contentious in the primary, these safe seats. But a lot of the times, sometimes you can still have just one person who just consolidates it early. No one else is interested, and they're able to kind of luck into a seat, especially at the start of a decade. Pretty impressive, I would think. Be able to win by that margin and really set yourself up well for the next decade, for sure.
That's definitely for sure right there. We're continuing to look for more results here across the state of Texas. Here, Montgomery County. Almost fully in, we believe, for the House race between Morgan Luttrell and Christian Collins. We also have some reports in from Walker County on Decision Desk HQ. Again, Luttrell at around 54%, to Collins 23% right now. That would be probably a pretty big win, I would say, here for the Dan Crenshaw winning the primary, and probably a bit of a breath of relief for some national Republicans, considering the people that Collins was endorsed by. Again, I already mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, Wendy Rogers, Mike Lindell. That would certainly be kind of seen as a victory there for congressional Republicans, normal Republicans in that regard, establishment Republicans in that regard, if Luttrell were you to even avoid a runoff here against Collins. That would be a big deal, I would think. Would you say that, Eric, or do you think this is maybe something we should have seen coming?
I would assume if this holds, I would assume so. In hindsight, if this does hold, one thing I will say that's been consistent is that Twitter is not real life and the internet is not real life. You get a lot of people online talking about Christian Collins. Obviously, things could change. The Harris County portion is closer and it has less of the vote in. We don't know how those rural counties will vote. It's certainly possible that his vote is dragged under 50%. But I would say this is a fairly embarrassing performance from Collins, given how highly touted his campaign was. In a runoff, anything goes. You could get 49% of the vote in a runoff and still lose, or 49% in the initial primary and then lose the runoff. But it's a lot less likely when your opponent's only about 25% of the vote and they have to consolidate all of their potential opponents and they're the more contentious one of the bunch. You look at the governor primary as well. A lot of talk about pulling Abbott under 60%. People trying to be like, oh, we can pull 60%. We could pull to a runoff. You have the Dan Hafeen's people that was basically everywhere. Lo and behold, he's pulling really good margins. 70% statewide, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good performance in the primary. Not as much as you'd want. You'd probably prefer it to be 80, 90%. But in a Republican primary in Texas, where they tend to be dissatisfied with Republican governors sometimes, we've looked at 2006, a bunch of other occasions. That's not a bad performance. And it's certainly not what these online people have been touting. That's sort of a different area from the actual real life world that the rest of the world inhabits, I would say.
Yeah, and Eric, I'm going to want you to tweet something out about this because I think this is becoming more interesting as the night goes on here. Decision Desk is reporting with an estimated 56% of the vote in the House 30 Democratic primary. Again, this is the seat that is being vacated by Eddie Bernice Johnson. Jasmine Crockett was endorsed by her. She's a state rep from Texas from the 100th District. Suspected heavy favor going into the night, but she is currently below 50% right now. She is hovering around 46% right now. Jane Hamilton is in the race with around 20% of the vote right now. She would be the runoff candidate. Of course, it would be a race that we would then expect, like I talked about earlier in the night. Sometimes we have primaries and a runoff that we sometimes see the second place jump first place, and sometimes we just see that first place candidate ride that momentum and take it with them. I would expect it to be the latter in this case. Would certainly be interesting, though, to see Crockett be forced into a runoff, especially with the incumbent Democratic Congresswoman's endorsement for her retiring seat. I think that would be a surprise. Really a big reason for that right now in Dallas County, where, again, a good chunk of the vote is in, above 50% is in, according to Decision Desk HQ. Crockett is below 50% right there right now. She's only gaining about 45.7% of the vote right now in Dallas County. Hamilton's around 20% right now, with the other little sliver of Tarrant that's in the district being pretty similar. So, remember, these are Democrat primaries happening across both parties tonight. That's something that's interesting to watch. Crockett's progressive, definitely from that left-wing article of the Democrats right now, probably would fall into that, definitely into the progressive caucus for sure. But again, she had the endorsement of the incumbent Congresswoman, so it would definitely be interesting to see her be forced into a runoff in this situation, I think, looking around at the rest of the country. And it continues to look more and more like we're heading to a runoff in the Republican primary for Attorney General right now. I know, Eric, I'll get back to you here very shortly, but Decision Desk HQ is estimating around 37% of the vote in right now. Ken Paxton continues to hover around 42% of the vote, with Eva Guzman in second with 22.2%, and George P. Bush in third with around 20% of the vote. Lou Gohmert in fourth, around 15.6%. So again, it continues to look like we're continuing to trend towards what we would feel like right now is a Republican runoff in the Attorney General race for that primary. That is what we're continuing to trend to right now as we look across the nation. I know you were going to say something, Eric, so go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is really interesting. That 30th district race, definitely surprising. I know many of us are paying more attention to the 3rd district, but we've had occasional Democratic instances of a competitive primary. I'll be interested to see how it goes if it does go to a runoff, because the next closest Democrat in that race only has 19.8% of the vote, Jane Hamilton. You probably want more consolidation if you're an opponent there, but that's not necessarily a huge vote of confidence, especially with the incumbent, the support of the incumbent there. That's a pretty big deal, I would say for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's interesting. I would say
Go
that what makes
ahead.
it interesting is the fact we have the support of the incumbent in this race happening, and we don't see someone avoid a runoff. That's relatively rare when that happens. And I do want to point out right now, okay, I've got something to point out in the 3rd district. Decision Desk HQ is estimating 73% of the vote in. Van Taylor right now is barely avoiding a runoff, which would right now again go back towards former Collin County Judge Keith Self, who's at 26% of the vote. Eric, again, I think that's probably something we're going to want to tweet out about. But again, we talked about this is a race that we could see a surprise forced to a runoff right now. Taylor is not that far off. I believe most of the remaining vote comes from Collin County as well, which is both Taylor and Self's home bases. Certainly still something to watch right now as we get into tonight with around 25% of the vote left right now. We're definitely watching that right now. If incumbent Republican Congressman Van Taylor is forced into a runoff with Keith Self, a former Collin County judge. So, Eric, what would you think about that? If we do see Taylor fall below 50% here, kind of what would your thought process be about that?
Again, there's a little bit more consolidation here than before, but if I'm an incumbent and I'm being forced to do a primary like this, just out of the blue, I'm not out of the blue. I mean, we knew this might be coming, but that'd be pretty surprising, and I'd be pretty concerned if I were Van Taylor. Obviously, you want to be the one in first place here and with more votes, but you really don't want to be in that situation, especially as an incumbent. That's got to get some warning signs up there for your campaign team.
Absolutely, for sure. We're continuing to look throughout the votes here tonight in Texas, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank everyone for being with us here so far. We've had pretty consistent and solid viewership right now throughout the night. So we want to thank everyone who's continuing to watch and listen to us here as we are almost an hour from now, officially almost an hour from when polls close in the state of Texas, as we continue to see key primaries for both statewide and congressional races come in throughout the country. So again, thank you folks very much for staying with us. We still have a long way to go and a long ways throughout the state coming down right now as we continue to see the state of Texas kick off our 2022 primary cycle. Thank you for being us with here at Elections Daily. And again, if you enjoy what we're doing right here tonight, we're going to have many more of these, hopefully with a wider cast of characters than we have tonight, especially as we get towards the summer months. We are excited here to be with you, and we hope you give this live stream a like and subscribe. And we also hope you follow us on Twitter at elections_daily. We also live stream our stuff here there as well. We have a concurrent live stream going live right now there on Twitter. So if you would like to join with us there, either way, it'd be great. We post all of our articles with links on Twitter as well. That's how we'll get most of our updates. So if you like what we're seeing tonight, you want to see more from our wider base here in terms of analysis, you're going to want to take a look at our Twitter as well. So again, thank you all. Again, very consistent viewer base tonight. We continue to appreciate the support with these primary nights here. So again, looking through across some of the key races throughout the night here in Texas, Beto O'Rourke and Greg Abbott right now both cruising to their respective nominations for governor. As we expected, it will be a race, it looks like right now, between Greg Abbott and Beto O'Rourke right now. We've got about 37% estimated in both races right now. I do want to point out right now, even with a lot of some of the heavier, some very heavy Democratic areas as well right now, Republicans are outvoting Texas Democrats in this primary by about 210,000 votes right now. Certainly something, as we talk about midterms with enthusiasm here, definitely something to pay attention here right now. We have seen about 220,000 more Republican votes in the Republican primaries than we have seen in the Democratic Party. So that's certainly something interesting we see right now as we continue to come on through the state of Texas. We continue to look in key primaries throughout the state. I do want to bring up an estimate here on the Rio Grande primaries. Monica de la Cruz, as expected, cruising, excuse my terrible pun there, cruising to, it seems like, the Republican nomination right now only about 25% of the vote in right now, but she's got 65% right there. So certainly something to pay attention to. Again, we are still waiting on a lot more votes, though, from these Rio Grande seats. That's where some of our more interesting primaries are, including the 28th district. So we're still waiting on numbers from those Rio Grande area counties. Certainly something still that we are looking at here. That might be the reason why we're waiting longer tonight, are those Rio Grande counties. That's what caused us waiting back in 2020 with some of these certain seats. We look at the 23rd in the runoff. That's what kind of caused us waiting at some of these border county seats. They sometimes take a while to report their votes. So as we continue to wait on that there, we are also looking at key primaries from across the country. Again, Morgan Luttrell with around 74% of the vote in, according to Decision Desk HQ, is sitting around 54% of the vote right now in this race to replace Kevin Brady in the safe Republican 8th district in Texas. So that is certainly something to watch right now. Morgan Luttrell would surprisingly avoid a primary runoff there with Christian Collins, who is currently in second place right there. That would certainly be a bigger surprise than maybe what we expected here going into the night as well. We're looking at also the 38th district, Wesley Hunt, currently right now with 56% of the vote there, with an estimated 75% in, according to Decision Desk HQ. Hunt has been, this seat was basically drawn for Hunt. If you talk to anyone who's in Texas politics, they will admit that this seat was basically drawn for Wesley Hunt when the redistricting process occurred in Texas. It is a big deal right there now as we continue just to wait for more results to come in right now. Also on the Republican side, we're looking at the 3rd district as a potential surprise right now. Van Taylor is only about potentially some good results in from the remaining votes in Collin County from being forced into a runoff with Keith Self, a former Collin County judge in that 3rd district, drawn significantly safer Republican than what it was. On the Democratic side in these congressional races, right now, very early, mostly from the San Antonio area of the new area of the district now, Jessica Cisneros holds a 69 to 25 lead over Henry Cuellar. We estimate about 25% of the vote is in. Again, we are waiting mostly here on the Rio Grande Valley counties here that we expect much more favorable to Henry Cuellar necessarily than Jessica Cisneros. That's what we expect, at least. We don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but that's what we expect right now as we continue to go on into this night here. Eric, I know you just messaged me that you have something that you would like to speak about.
Yeah, so we got 3 counties in South Texas, according to Decision Desk, and 3 of them in the Rio Grande Valley. Interestingly, I've looked at the Democratic primary here. Obviously, we mentioned before Beto O'Rourke's underperformance with Hispanics in 2018. It appears to be continuing in this primary statewide. In the Democratic primary for governor, he is getting a very impressive 93% of the vote or so. Really, really good showing, obviously. But in the Rio Grande Valley, he's actually doing much, much worse. So obviously in Cameron County, I mentioned earlier, he's at 80% in Cameron County, 80.6%. That's 12% lower than his statewide performance. Obviously, that's less than ideal, but it's not a huge thing. Jim Hogg County, he's at 76% in Jim Hogg County, which is a more rural county, and then in Avondale or Uvalde County, also at 75%. That's pretty interesting. Obviously, we want to see more of these counties come in, but that's continuing that sort of underperformance we talked about with Hispanic voters in that region, and specifically aimed at Beto O'Rourke in particular. I don't see any other Democrats doing that different regionally in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah, I do want to. We got this across that has not come across our data yet, but this is reportedly out there that Henry Cuellar wins the Webb County early vote, which is one of the biggest counties in the seat, 61 to 36 over Cisneros and Webb County. That has not yet been updated with our results, but apparently Cuellar beats Cisneros 61 to 36. He carried it by 10 in 2020. That's certainly something that will certainly shrink those numbers right there. Once we get them in, if those are confirmed, that'll be something that'll certainly shift those numbers as we would get them in here. If we see them soon, that would certainly be something that would shift those numbers and shift those results, I would have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say so. If you look at the Attorney General again, going towards New York Times, they do have George P. Bush up in Hidalgo County, winning Hidalgo County, Eva Guzman in third there. But obviously, we're waiting for a decision desk as well. But he's still in third place in that race. We're following a lot of these things here. They're all pretty fascinating, pretty interesting races to keep that we're going to be looking at here. I will. Apparently, Don Huffines has decided to put out a statement for some reason that he's conceded that he will not be the candidate for governor. So, but he's taken credit apparently for pushing Abbott to the right, which is typically how these sorts of primaries tend to go. He basically explicitly in a statement took credit for making Abbott go more to the right on social issues and on the border. So take that for what you will. He's basically declaring victory in terms of what his goal was, apparently, which was not governor, but to push Abbott instead to the right. So that's an interesting little statement there from him.
Yeah, and we would like to confirm, folks, this just came through the Decision Desk HQ, and that concurrently Elections Daily has just called the Texas gubernatorial primaries for both parties as expected. Beto O'Rourke runs away with that primary as expected, but also we officially project that Greg Abbott, the incumbent governor of Texas, will push off primary challenges from both Don Huffines and Allen West as expected. Those far-right primary challenges fail to challenge the governor and actually have so far done about 8 to 9 points worse than polling had them with Abbott around 60%. He is around 69% right now. Decision Desk HQ also projects that Dan Patrick will beat back his nominal primary challenger as well. He will once again be the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor and will be favored in that race as well, considerably more so than he was in 2018. I also want to apparently we go here if we hear about the results with the Webb County. It came across us. Thank you to the person in the comment. When it comes down to with the Webb early vote in, Cisneros is only above Cuellar 52 to 43. So again, we do see tightening. Once we officially get that Webb County vote in, it will certainly tighten there for this race between Cuellar and Cisneros. Certainly something to continue to watch here as we go throughout the night here. This has been the big one. We've talked about this one for a while now. This race between Cisneros and Cuellar continues to be the big one. So, what do you mean, Eric? Do you think if he continues to see good margins like that throughout the Rio Grande, do you think Cuellar could once again, potentially by the skin of his teeth, survive?
It certainly makes things more interesting.
Yeah, that is for sure. As we cross the 9 o'clock hour here, we have gotten officially our first confirmation of key races. Decision Desk HQ has called it for Greg Abbott and Beto O'Rourke for his races, which means we are confirmed as we have expected for the longest time now. It will be Greg Abbott versus Beto O'Rourke to be the next governor of Texas. We considerably have that race right now as likely Republican, but is certainly closer to safe with Abbott now officially out of any primary challenger. It will be very interesting to see right now as we continue to go on right now. Dan Patrick also confirmed right now as the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor. I also want to go back to the New York Times here. We want to look at the 35th district here. Greg Casar, around 59.5% right now, around 57% of the vote in. Eddie Rodriguez around 17%. That would be a big one there for sure. Casar, who again would very much want to not have to deal with a runoff situation there for sure. Something very interesting to watch again. We're continuing to look across the country right now. Not much else interesting, you have to say. Now, I wouldn't say not much else interesting, but we haven't seen much else right now from other parts of interesting stuff when it comes to these congressional primaries. We kind of got the ones we've got right now. In the attorney general's races, Ken Paxton continues to be held below the 42% mark in that race. Even Eva Guzman is in second place with around 22%. We're continuing to see it right now. It seems like we are going to start to get results coming in from the Rio Grande Valley, which will help us, I think, decide some of these key primaries. So we are going to continue to look for right now, Eric. What are you kind of looking for along these border counties? Not necessarily just in primaries as well, but also potentially in the Attorney General's race. It seems like George P. Bush doing pretty well right now, along with those Rio Grande Valley Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned before, he's pretty well liked. The Hidalgo County Republican Party is especially active, and they've always been big supporters of him. He's made a specific effort, concerted effort to appeal to Hispanic voters. So I'm not entirely surprised he'll be doing better in this region. I'm more surprised he's doing worse statewide, specifically around Houston. Obviously, the Rio Grande Valley is excellent, statewide for Republican votes, but this is the rough equivalent of like trading a big urban area for a bunch of small counties. These places don't cast a ton of Republican votes in the Republican primaries. So if you're a Republican, you probably would rather be winning more votes in Harris County than you would, in Hidalgo County. Like right now, if you look at the New York Times, they're saying Bush has about 4,000 votes in Hidalgo County, which is really great. The problem is in Harris County, Ken Paxton has 44,000 votes. Eva Guzman has 30,000. Bush has 15,000. Which county would you rather be doing better in? Which region would you rather be doing better in? It's the same problem with Louis Gohmert. He's doing really well around Tyler, Texas. He's got 62% of the vote in Smith County. He's winning all these other counties around it, but the rest of the state is not doing that well. In these sorts of split primaries, sometimes it's best to do better in a specific region, but a lot of times it's better to do better, broadly speaking, in all counties, rather than being first in a specific region, being second in all of the regions. That's usually the better approach to getting into these runoffs, getting into these situations. It's not over for Bush by any means, but if I would rather be Guzman right now. I will certainly would rather not be Gohmert, although he may well be winning a lot more of these, East Texas counties. He's got a pretty firm line. If you look at the counties that are in so far, the counties that he's doing well in are a pretty clear regional line for East Texas. I'll actually go ahead and pull it up on my screen here just to give you an idea of the Louis Gohmert law, for lack of a better term.
And you're certainly not wrong.
Yeah, these are the Gohmert counties. He is winning in East Texas. The problem, of course, is that East Texas does not have a lot of voters relative to other portions of Texas. So he's doing really, really well, around his home. But you would rather be doing much better, finishing second or third statewide instead of fourth everywhere else, and then first in Tyler. That would seem to be more what I would prefer if I was a candidate, and that's what Guzman seems to be doing pretty well. Actually, she's doing very well in a lot of regions, not just in her home region. She's polling right now in Harris County, 29% of the vote. That's pretty good. If you go to Dallas County, 26% of the vote. Tarrant County, 21% of the vote. Williamson County, she's in third there, but it's got 22% of the vote. Bayard County, 20% of the vote. El Paso County so far, she's in fourth. But broadly speaking, statewide, she's doing really well in a lot of regions, specifically Houston, that you would rather be doing very well in, whereas Bush is doing very poorly. And for example, Montgomery County, he's in fourth place in Montgomery County. Louis Gohmert is actually in second place in Montgomery County right now. It's a fascinating race that we're looking at so far. I think that's a pretty simple way to put it.
Yeah. We continue to kind of look at some of these races here. Again, we've officially been set now for the governor races in both the Republican lieutenant governor primary, as also been called. But going over to lieutenant governor primary on the Democratic side, this is still something to interest in. Mike Collier, there's about, again, we've got around 37% reporting here for the Democrats in their lieutenant governor's race. Collier is hovering around we're basically right on right now. Collier has 45%, Beckley has 28%, Burley has 27%. The question has always been, will Cuellar be, forced into a runoff here, will Collier be forced into a runoff here or not, or will he kind of be the Democrats' go-to candidate here when it comes to it, it's going to be really interesting to see here right now, kind of where that goes. It'll be really interesting to see. I'll be very interesting to kind of watch and see and where this goes here for some of these races here tonight. Again, we're set right now, watching for these key races here right now. It'll be very interesting to see right now, kind of as we continue to get some more of these, hopefully some of these Rio Grande Vault results officially updated soon here, that we can kind of start making some real conclusions here on those races. So we'll see what that means. And it'll be very interesting to see right now as we continue to go on to the night. We've seen some really interesting things. Again, it continues to look more and more like the Republican primary for Attorney General, like Eric said, seems to be pretty dead set on heading to the runoff. Who will be the person to face against Paxton, we don't know yet. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of watch and see here, kind of where we go from this. I mean, as we continue to kind of go on tonight here, again, we want to thank everyone. We've been on for almost 2 hours now already, so that's crazy. And we have gotten some big updates now in the 15th district, according to the New York Times. At least, let me see if we have those here on. We do not have them here on the decision desk, but in the New York Times, they're saying we've got some solid updates here from the 15th district on both sides here. 38% in for Monica, with 38% in the Republican primary. Monica De La Cruz is up 64 to 18. Again, I suspect that she's cruising through that. 52% in with the Democratic primary. This seems to be heading to a runoff, so this is certainly something we're going to want to watch here right now. The 15th is expected to be one of the more competitive seats for sure across the country this year. Right now, Ruben Ramirez up 28 with 28 points. John Rigney's in second with 21. Michelle Vallejo is with 19, and then Eliza Alvarado with 17%. And again, Vallejo was kind of the one we mentioned. It got some late endorsement from Elizabeth Warren, I believe on Monday from yesterday. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly something to watch. And we do have updated numbers now, at least from the New York Times in the 28th district. Let me refresh my decision desk results here and see if they have come in. But it looks like the Times has those results. So we're going to take a quick look there. So we're going to take a quick look here, and I'm going to bring these up here because I think this is very important right now. Like we said, there is the introduction of a third candidate into this Democratic primary that makes it a bit more interesting. We've seen the results now from Webb County come in. According to the New York Times, as I pull them up right here for you guys right now, as we pull them up here. Yes, there we go. With Webb County now in again, as we said, ooh. It's now Cisneros is around 51%. The Cuellar is 44.6%. And again, this is what we talked about here. Some of these counties here, Starr County, which is expected to have a good amount of votes too. And again, if we look at those Webb County numbers, that we would probably expect to be good for Cuellar. But again, we talked about this. We talked about this third candidate in the race, Tanya Benavides. This could be something that forces this Cisneros and Cuellar below 3%. This would lead to another 2.5-month campaign in what is, again, it's a Biden +8 seat. Something that's going to be interesting to look at here. Very interesting to see, very interesting to look at. Cisneros right now is over 50%, but again, and Eric, I would recommend tweeting this out for sure because I'm sure our folks on Twitter are going to want to know about this. Mm-hmm. But once again, this is very interesting right now. This is going to be the key primary. Cisneros barely over that 50% mark right now. Very interesting right now as we start seeing more of these Rio Grande Valley counties come in. That's really kind of what we're looking at right now. That's going to be the interesting one to watch. Do we see a runoff and another 2.5 months of campaigning between Henry Cuellar and Jessica Cisneros? What does that mean for the district? That would be. I think that adds. Would you agree, everything that would add another key wrinkle here as we kind of get.
That would be major. That'd be important, especially with the ongoing investigation. That could be a pretty big role in any upcoming primary or in any upcoming runoff, I should say.
Yeah. So we're continuing to get more votes in from these seats here. Again, we're still waiting on some key. Mainly, Starr County is the big Rio Grande Valley County we're still waiting for right now. That's really kind of what we're looking at here. Importantly, New York Times is only expecting around 4,000 votes from Behar County, which is, that would be the kind of we would expect to be Cisneros, who's based from the San Antonio suburban area. So that's certainly something to continue to keep an eye on right now as we continue to go on here throughout the night. Jessica Cisneros barely in the lead right now, avoiding a runoff with just over 50% of the vote. Continues to be really interesting to watch right now. We will continue to encourage everyone to watch what's going on right now in that race. Very interesting to see. So that's really that is the big primary we're watching right now. I do want to give a quick check-in here to the 30th district. Jasmine Crockett still below 50% in that race as well, which would be a bit of a surprise going into the night. We continue. Greg Casar still over 50% in the night. Again, we're starting to get more in now from these Rio Grande counties. So we're interesting things to watch here right now. We continue to get more and more results in. Again, it continues to look like we're going to see a runoff in the Republican primary for Attorney General. We continue to seem to be trending that way. The governor's primaries have already been decided, so nothing much up to there. Of course, as we've expected, our viewership has dropped off a little bit as we've seen. President Biden right now is currently getting in his speech for his first State of the Union address is currently happening right now. So that is occurring right now. And I do want to just tell you right now that according to one of our sources in Texas, we are hearing that people are expecting potentially a runoff in both primaries in the 28th district. That's certainly to be expected for the Republican side, but our Texas source is saying that people are expecting a runoff in the Democratic primary as well there. And we are also hearing, thanks to John in the chat, we are starting to see tweets right now that Greg Casar is declaring victory in the 35th district. That is kind of a big deal. I would probably agree with that right now, especially as we believe most of this vote continues to be from Austin, which is Casar's home base. Greg Casar, once we get that officially called here from Decision Desk, if that happens tonight, we would say that Casar, of course, would be the overwhelming favorite in that very new safe Democratic seat. Not at all hard to see why that is. So, this is going to be very interesting to see if anything else occurs here as we continue to get into the area here to kind of get into night here. Again, going to take a quick
I have
look.
I have a spicy primary to talk about.
Ooh, interesting. Go ahead.
So the Texas Railroad Commissioner primary, we mentioned this could be potentially competitive. Right now, the incumbent, Wayne Christian, on the Republican side, has had 50.5% of the vote.
Whoa.
In second place, though, there's a big pileup for that second place spot if this will go to a runoff. The lead right now is the controversial Sarah Stogner, who was best known for her TikTok ad where she posed nearly nude atop an oil rig. She was in second place with 14.9% of the vote. In third place, right behind him, is Tom Slocum Jr., 13.4%. Then Dwayne Tipton and Marvin Summers both at around 10 to 11% of the vote. So obviously, two things: one, this is pretty close to a runoff, and two, I wonder if that oil ad helped or hurt Stogner, because it actually caused her, I believe it wasn't an endorsement withdrawal. It got the San Antonio Express News to recommend a different candidate for the railroad commissioner primary over her. So that's an interesting one. It's certainly one of the more unusual campaign ads I've ever seen. It's
That's
more
for
of a
sure.
TikTok. Yeah, it was. And then, so, obviously the railroad commissioner is a weird office in Texas. I could go into detail on it, but I really won't. It's an interesting race. We'll let you know if this goes to a runoff or not, but it is close to that point. It's close, relatively close to that margin. Worth noting, Stogner is winning one county so far, Reeves County. She has 20 votes there. That is an oil county. That is an oil country county in the Trans-Pecos region of Texas, I believe, right near King County, the infamous King County, the smallest, least populated county in the country formerly, that had its population nearly double because of the census, if I recall correctly. It's in that region of the state. Several other offices will mention here. On the Democratic side, the governor primary, of course, stayed about the same. Worth noting, O'Rourke is continually underperforming in virtually every county in the Rio Grande Valley and along the border. He's doing well in El Paso County, his former county, but in Culver City, he only has 72% of the vote. In Reeves County, 64% of the vote in Reeves County. Sorry, this is a little bit slow loading up here. In Jeff Davis County, 90% of the vote. That's a little bit better for him. And then, of course, that's Brewster County. Sorry, Decision Desk is glitching up on me here, but I'll get back to that in a second. But basically, on the Democratic side, O'Rourke is winning by a very good margin basically everywhere except for the Rio Grande Valley. Attorney General primary, looks like I believe it goes to a runoff if it's under it, but it's Rochelle Garza is ahead 37% of the vote. Her next closest opponents are all around 23% of the vote, 20% of the vote. And then Lieutenant Governor primary on the Democratic side, as we mentioned before, Mike Collier well ahead. Although that second place spot in this three-way race, Michelle Beckley and Carla Braley both within a point and a half of each other. So that could go to a runoff or the second runoff spot there will be interesting to look at between Beckley and Braley. Obviously, Beckley announced her campaign for lieutenant governor while she was in, if I recall correctly, while she was in D.C. When you had the Texas walkout. Feels like that happened years ago, but it happened fairly recently. She announced her run then, but obviously Mike Collier is well ahead at this point, and I would say he'd probably be the favorite in a runoff. Although, again, you never know. There are times when people finish with 45, 46% of the vote and still lose the runoff. It has happened before. So it's not worth rejecting or considering it out of hand. The possibility of an upset like that. Again, the first district mentioned, Nathaniel Moran is just demolishing all competition, 78% of the vote in an open primary. For context here, he's doing better in this open primary than a lot of Republicans are doing than a lot of incumbent Republicans are doing in their primaries, in safe primaries, safe seats. He's pulling a better percentage of the vote than Dan Crenshaw right now. Dan Crenshaw, 76% of the or 77% of the vote in his primary. Van Taylor, again, still at 51.5% in his primary, 73% of the vote in that important congressional district. In the 8th district, Morgan Luttrell is continuing to hold his lead, 54% of the vote for Luttrell in the 8th district primary. Christian Collins, a distant second, 22.8% of the vote. And then obviously that 28th district, you mentioned, they both could be going to a runoff, or they both will be. The top two right now in the 28th district are Cassie Garcia and Ed Cabrera. On the Republican side. And then obviously in the Democratic side, we're still unchanged from the last results we had. 50.8% of the vote for Cisneros, 44.6% for Cuellar, and then 4.5% for another independent candidate right there. For another third party candidate, or third candidate in that race. Obviously, there's unlike in Alaska, you cannot run a third party in the Democratic Party primary, or at least you can't even do that in Alaska anymore because they have the four-way primary thing now. That is the state of some of those crucial primaries. Again, we'll go back to the 35th congressional district here on the Democratic side. We mentioned the Kazar Rodriguez race, or Kazar, sorry. Greg Kazar has, of course, declared victory here in that race. He is leading prohibitively 67.6% of the vote. Eddie Rodriguez in second with 18.9%. Apparently, running to the right in Austin was not a viable campaign strategy.
Nope.
Yeah, a bad idea. I do not recommend. In fact, I would explicitly recommend you do the opposite. You run to the left if you're running in Austin. That seems like the more wise thing to do there.
Yeah, for sure. That certainly will be described as a interesting campaign strategy for sure by Eddie Rodriguez when I think people look back at that race, if they look back at it at all. Because this is probably going to be a race where not a whole lot of people are necessarily going to be looking back at, as Kazar potentially gains himself a well-ordained potentially seat for a very, very long time in the Austin to San Antonio area. That is a seat that is going to potentially be there for a very, very long time. You know, yeah, that's really kind of the big thing right now is that, we kind of have the first real contested primary of the night seems to be over. Greg Kazar, he has declared victory, so it seems very likely he will not be forced into a runoff. He will be the Democratic nominee in the 35th district. He will win that district in November. That is a safe Democratic district there, as we spend. That goes from the east side of Austin down to parts of San Antonio. So really no big deal there for Democrats. But in the end, that's just another added seat. That'll be another member of the Progressive Caucus. That'll be joining the House of Representatives as well as we get into here these races. And again, we're continuing to look here for continued updates here as we continue to go along the night right now. Again, if we go to these statewide races here in Texas, looking at the Attorney General Republican primary here right now. Again, this is estimating about 50% of the vote in. Ken Paxton continues to hover over just over 42% right now. And again, Eva Guzman separated by about 7,300 votes between them, between her and George Bush. So that's really kind of the thing there right now. Who it seems like will go up against Paxton in this race here. It's continuing to tighten right now between Bush and Guzman. So that's certainly something very interesting to look at here and watch. But Eric, I'm going to bring it to you here again a little bit here. Who do you think is probably the better candidate if you were a Republican who was against Ken Paxton? Who do you think you would rather see go up against him in a runoff in May? Would you rather see Bush or would you rather see Guzman?
Well, obviously, if you're Ken Paxton, you would prefer to see Louis Gohmert, but Louis Gohmert is not going to be in there. Both of these candidates have their own interesting vulnerabilities, right? George P. Bush, you could easily attack him as an establishment sort of candidate. Obviously, George P. Bush is interesting in that he's the most Trumpy of the Bushes. He's also well liked by the Republican establishment, and he's also Hispanic through his mother. Really, again, his strength seems to be mostly in the Rio Grande Valley. I would much rather probably be running against him. Guzman and Gozar are two very different people.
Very different
positions. Very different. Yeah, very, very different. Guzman is one statewide before. She is a statewide candidate, a judge, can get that Rio Grande Valley vote, but is also pretty well known in other areas of the state. Is doing pretty well. I would probably say if I were Paxton, I'd want to run against Bush. I think there'd probably be maybe a little bit more of an opportunity there. But Guzman is a really, really fascinating candidate who would be really interesting attorney general. I don't believe there are any Hispanic or female attorney general Republicans anywhere in the country. Maybe even Hispanic Latina attorney generals in general. Pun not intended there. So I would say probably if I were Paxton, I would want to go up against Bush. Gohmert is not an option, so it would be Bush.
Okay, certainly interesting to see here right now. Continuing to look across the country tonight, we're starting to see some congressional primaries get called here. As we look at some of these races, as we talked about, Nathaniel Moran seems pretty set to be the Republican candidate in the first district. People like Dan Crenshaw, Pat Fallon, Jake Elzy, who won that special election in the 6th district back in the summertime, Kay Granger, Randy Weber, Pete Sessions, Chip Roy, Troy Nels, Beth Van Dyne, Burgess, Michael Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
Mike, Carter, VC, Gonzalez, you go into, Doggett and, kind of these guys, that's not really seats that have, other than really the Quaylar race, we're not really seeing, and honestly, the 3rd district as well with Van Taylor and Keith Self. We haven't really seen anything else interesting going on right now. If we go into the 30th, I know we just saw a question. We want to look back at the 30th here as we kind of saw some of these numbers hopefully start to continue to gain in more and more. We see more of the election day vote here. Again, Jasmine Crockett continues to hold firm. We haven't seen votes here in a while, but Crockett continues to hold right now at around 46.3% of the vote. Jane Hamilton would be the candidate to go against her in the potential runoff there. So, something certainly we're continuing to watch. We're continuing to watch here as the night goes on, and hopefully we continue to get some more numbers reported soon. That would be very nice and helpful to us all. If we continue to get some more numbers reported soon, so that way we could kind of get some official calls on the races here as we reach now the 9:30 hour. Polls closed officially an hour and a half ago across the state of Texas. All polls are closed. We're kind of, this is kind of the part now we're just kind of waiting along right now. So, asking any questions right now in the 15th district, Monica De La Cruz is, again, pun intended, cruising in the Republican nomination there. It looks more and more like the 15th district Democratic primary to technically replace Vicente Gonzalez, who moved over to the 34th district, will be a runoff there. We don't really know who yet. It seems like Ramirez will be able to get himself a seat there, but there's a large pileup for candidates in second place. So certainly a lot to watch there as well still. We've still got, we have votes to count certainly across the country still right now. And we're kind of just waiting for some of them to kind of be confirmed and come in and get this get these votes counted. That's kind of what we're waiting for right now. So, I certainly hope we continue to see more of that soon. And I'm sure Eric does as well, as we continue to see more of that here soon here, as we see some of these, see these counties come in.
So I got two things. One is that I'm looking at the Republican primary in the Rio Grande Valley. Of course, we've been following these counties pretty closely. Greg Abbott is just crushing it in some of these counties. He's doing very, very well in general. Obviously, he's at 69% of the vote statewide, which is good. It's a reasonably good performance statewide. Both of his nearest competitors are 11%. This wasn't expected to be competitive, but in the big urban counties in the Rio Grande Valley, he is doing far better than that. He is at 82% in El Paso. He is at 74% in Webb County, 80% in Hidalgo County, and 83% in Cameron County. He's doing very, very well in the Rio Grande Valley in the Republican primary. Now, obviously, primary vote doesn't necessarily correlate with electoral performance in the general, but he's made a concerted effort to appeal to voters in the Rio Grande Valley. And among Republicans there, he is clearly doing far better. For comparison, in the other big urban counties statewide, he's at 74% in Bayard, still good performance, 69% in Dallas and Tarrant, and then 66% in Harris County. So he's clearly performing far better in these Rio Grande Valley counties than he is performing, in other counties statewide. The other race niche on the Republican side, I believe some people were asking about this, the 34th district Republican primary. We haven't been following this because it's not been expected to be extremely competitive, but the leader in that race is who we expected it to be. Sorry, I'm reloading my screen here. It's deciding to crash on me. So in the 28th district, I mentioned that first, Cassie Garcia. Again, this is going to go to a runoff, likely between Cassie Garcia and any number of other candidates there. But in the 34th district, which was Republican candidates going to be Myra Flores in all likelihood, 61% of the vote. It looks like all of the votes are in pretty much from that county. Flores has not been the great fundraiser that others expected. Monica De La Cruz has done far better in fundraising. But as far as sleeper seats go, the 34th is a pretty good guess. that region of Texas, Cameron County, Hidalgo, all the way up to a Corpus Christi area. Some of the well, this is a county I believe that went to Biden by about 11 points or so. In terms of trends, this is a pretty strongly trending area, and Republicans have a history of overperforming in this area. Republicans did flip this district or a similarly designed district back in 2010, a Hispanic majority district there. They flipped that and were able to win control of it in a Republican year when the area was much less Republican in theory than it is right now. So that's one to watch. Flores is not the fundraiser that people would be expecting to flip this sort of seat. But on the other hand, this is also an interesting region to look at. Cameron has traditionally been the most Republican of the urban counties in this area. It voted for George Bush in 2004. Hidalgo County did not go for Bush. So, it's an interesting race to look at, although I would say the 28th is still the more likely Republican target for sure, assuming that Cisneros pulls it out, which that race is continuing to get pretty close as well. I believe it stayed about the same. And it looks like, a lot of the vote that's left in is from the Rio Grande Valley, which could very well push this thing to a runoff, if not a Cuellar victory.
Yeah. We did get a little bit more of the votes in the 8th district. Morgan Luttrell with a pretty dominating result out of Polk County, which is a smaller county in that eastern side of the district. Apparently, Decision Desk has almost all the votes in there from Polk. Luttrell won about 55.5% of the vote there. He leads with about 54%, 54% countywide.
But I was actually going to mention one more thing about the Rio Grande Valley is if Cassie Garcia is the one to win that, then in all likelihood, all three of the Rio Grande Valley seats, 15, 28, and 34, will have Latina Republican candidates, which obviously there's several that were in Congress last time that were gained and that have won. This would be probably the best chance for Republicans to expand their Hispanic delegation, but specifically Latina. And there could be an outside shot of Republicans winning all three, which would be devastating for Democrats, obviously, but would substantially improve the Republicans' representation of Hispanics and Latina candidates. Certainly, we expect Monica De La Cruz to be the winner in the 15th. We have, I believe, that leans Republican. Leans are likely one of the two. And then we have 28, I think, leans or likely, and then 34 at leans are likely as well.
Yeah, but 34 is at likely, 28 is at lean, and 15 right now we have at leans Republican. Actually, you have that as a flip right now. This is again, it's a Trump won seat. It takes in, once you kind of get out of the Rio Grande area, it does take in some even more typically more Republican areas as you kind of go up north there. So that's kind of the interesting thing there with the 15th district. That'll be really the interesting thing there right now, kind of as we go on with that. Very interesting to watch. Very interesting to see. Very interesting to watch. Again, this is going to be a battleground. We expect to have some fun with these areas when we get to the season. So yeah, very excited. Very interesting to see where this goes. Again, the Rio Grande, we expect that to be kind of, definitely a key area when we're looking at these seats. So yeah, something to continue to watch. We encourage everyone to, continue to follow along with us.
I believe Joe had an excellent article, in fact, about some of the competitive regions to pay attention to, one of which is the Rio Grande Valley.
Yes, one of which is the Rio Grande. Certainly something to look at for sure. Rio Grande is going to be very interesting. Looks like we might have gotten some more votes out of the 28th. We did, not a whole lot, but it dropped Cisneros down now to 50.4% of the vote now. So it dropped her down a little bit there in that 28th district. I don't know where necessarily those votes came from. As I look through these seats here, they might have been Guadalupe election day votes. Decision Desk says the votes from Guadalupe are almost all in. Jim Hogg, they say, is almost all in. 8 votes from McMullen County. So hooray!
Crucial McMullen County.
Hooray for crucial McMullen County there. We say that laughingly, but I'm sure the people of McMullen are incredibly nice individuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we go with that here. Again, we talked about this. Tanya Benavidez, the third candidate, is pulling around 4.6% of the vote right now. I would say that if Cuellar does well in Starr County, this race is starting to have the feel of a runoff. This is starting to have a feel. So yeah, that's going to be something very interesting right now. We continue to watch that on the Democratic side for sure. This is just something that's continuing to grow and grow here as we get more and more votes in from the Rio Grande Valley areas. Eric, we're looking at the Texas Attorney General primary as well here. We're continuing to look at a lot of numbers coming out of there from the Texas Attorney General primary. Again, it continues to look like that Ken Paxton, the incumbent Republican Attorney General, seems to be said to be drugged to a runoff against either Eva Guzman or George P. Bush. It continues to trend towards that way. Bush has not been, Paxton has not been over 42.5% of the vote since early in the night. So that is certainly a big deal. And I'm guessing that Joe Biden's speech is getting close to ending because I just saw about 5 or 6 people join the stream from the numbers we had. So I'm guessing that Joe Biden's State of the Union speech is going to be starting to finish up here, I would guess, as I start to see another tick up back in viewership closer to some of the numbers we saw earlier in the night. Again, it is currently 9:41, about an hour and 40 minutes after polls closed in Texas. Again, we've got about half of the vote in, according to Decision Dish, just over half the vote in right now. Again, Ken Paxton continues to hover around 42% of the vote. This continues to mean that Paxton will likely be forced to a runoff. We're still waiting on some numbers in from some more populous GOP counties, potentially. Denton, tried to look for something right now. So according to right now, what we're looking at right now, still kind of looking for results. We're looking for things right now. We're still waiting really much here on the right now in the 56th. So we're still very much waiting here. Big one we're waiting for potentially, especially when it comes to the Cuellar-Cisneros primary, is Starr County. We have still not yet to see votes in.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any from Zapata County either?
Zapata, let me check. I don't believe I saw any from Zapata County yet either.
That's the one that actually voted for Trump. That's the
weird one. That's the weird one we saw vote for Trump in 2020. So that's certainly something that we're still looking for here. As we continue to get down to it here across the night, we are continuing to go on right now. We are waiting continually here for differing election numbers here right now. Apparently, the numbers from Jim Hogg, we see a bit of an underperformance from the early day vote in Jim Hogg for Henry Cuellar. He won the early vote 74-21. He won the election day only 62-29. So, that can be something to watch there, Yeah. So very interesting. So we're really kind of still waiting here again for some key Rio Grande Valley counties. Again, just to give you folks an update right now, where does it look like we're heading to runoffs into some key areas? It looks like we're heading to a runoff in the Republican and Democratic primaries for Attorney General right now. It does seem like Ken Paxton is headed towards a runoff with either Eva Guzman or George P. Bush. We don't know yet. And again, it looks like Rochelle Garcia will be going against is kind of a little bit of a larger lead here. Joe Jaworski and Lee Merritt right now are the folks. Dan Patrick is currently right now at 78.3% of the vote right now. Mike, and he has won according to Decision Desk HQ. He is, of course, the nominee there in that for the Republicans there. On the Democratic primary for Lieutenant Governor, Mike Collier continues to hover around 45% of the vote. Michelle Beckley has grown her lead. She's at 29% compared to Carla Braley's 25.5%. So I would expect right now, it looks like we are trending towards a runoff between Collier and Beckley in that race in the 15th primary for Democrats. And I think this is going to be something very interesting. I want to bring this up right now. We've talked about the 15th right now. We're talking about, this used to be a very heavily Democratic area. But right now, Democrats are only outvoting Republicans in the primaries in the 15th district by about 3,000 votes. Oh. So that's certainly something to look at there, potentially. Again, we're continuing to wait on numbers here in the 28th district. Jessica Cisneros right now barely avoiding a runoff with Henry Cuellar. In the 28th Democratic primary, Greg Cesar has declared victory in the 35th District Democratic primary, a very safe Democratic seat there. As we continue to look on right now, we are continuing to watch as well the Republican primary in the 3rd District. Incumbent Congressman Van Taylor could potentially fall into a race in Collin County against former Collin County Judge Keith Self. He is only a couple hundred votes above that right now. If Self continues to get into good numbers on election day out of Collin County, we will see that race head to a runoff in all likelihood. As well as I want to poke notice towards the 30th district for Democrats right now with Jasmine Crockett running and has the endorsement of Eddie Bernice Johnson in that safely Democratic seat in and around Dallas. Crockett we haven't gotten any results from there in a while, but Crockett continues to kind of look like a very interesting thing right there. As Crockett kind of continues to we haven't seen any there from there in a while. Just a reminder to folks, the primary runoff date for Texas is May 24th. Again, it would only be the top 2 candidates from those races there right now. So very interesting to see right now. Very interesting to see as we continue to go on right now. What's going on right now? We're continuing to look at right now. We're still kind of waiting on some of the election day vote here from some key areas, especially, when we talk at some of these Democratic primaries. We're talking around Dallas County for that Democratic primary, the 30th district. We're talking about some of the Rio Grande area seats for some of these Republican primaries and Democratic primaries, mainly 28th. And we're also looking at sort of the Dallas suburbs. We're waiting on some election day vote from Collin County to confirm, some of these numbers here for the 3rd district. So, we're still kind of waiting and watching here right now. We still have a bit of a way to go here. We're about 10 minutes out from 10 o'clock right now as we continue to move on here throughout the night. Encouraging people here to continue to tune in here as we continue to get more and more results from updated times. We're really looking here at the races for competitive seats. Morgan Luttrell seems to potentially be on a surprising path to avoid a runoff. In the 8th District Republican primary, he seems to kind of be on his way to potentially avoiding a runoff there over Christian Collins. That would be certainly a win here, I would say, for the Dan Crenshaw wing of the primary. As most votes, we believe especially considering most of the votes now are coming, we believe, remain in Montgomery, where Luttrell had a very wide supply of votes there. We are expected to believe from our Texas source that we are sounding like that that Morgan Luttrell will likely avoid a runoff here, but we are not anywhere close towards confirming that here. But it looks like, in kind of surprise, in the 8th district, looks like Luttrell will avoid a runoff for that seat, which I'm sure to some people, we will consider that surprising. But again, me and Eric talked about this earlier in the night. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something we should have seen coming, considering some of the characters that had endorsed Luttrell, and also some of the late comments he made potentially were seen as controversial. So again, really interesting to see right now as we continue to go on here. Again, we're really just kind of waiting for stuff here. From these seats here. Looks like the decision desk is saying that we have almost 92% in now. That's because it sounds like Montgomery updated their last couple of votes here. Luttrell basically stayed around the same as we continue to go in right here on it looks like most of the counties except for Harris. I'm going to check San Jacinto, which is a smaller county, also hasn't gotten any votes in. Walker's almost finished, but it looks like we're really just kind of waiting on Harris and San Jacinto right now. But it continues to look like right now that Morgan Luttrell will potentially avoid a primary result here in
primary runoff. Yeah,
a primary runoff here in the 8th district. It's getting certainly interesting for sure. Again, that was really the big Republican primary we're watching tonight. It does not look like that has come to pass when we're looking at it right now. So that's certainly something very interesting to watch here as we continue to kind of just wait on some key results here throughout the country.
I got some big news.
Oh, Eric's got big news.
Yep, Railroad Commissioner race, the spiciest race in Texas. Wayne Christian is now under 50% of the vote. He's at 49.95% of the vote. Again, Sarah Stogner is still in second, but there's a 3-car pileup behind her. This is one that's a narrow runoff, but it could be an interesting race. It'll be interesting at least to see how that goes if it does indeed go to a runoff. But Stogner, again, infamous for the controversial TikTok, featured herself nearly naked on an oil platform or an oil rig. Whether it helped her or hurt her will remain to be seen, but she is appearing to be set for that second runoff spot right now.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Thank you for keeping your eye on that, Eric. Sid Miller has kind of continued to go down throughout the night. But Wayne Christian, if he gets held under 50%, that will certainly be a interesting sign of the night here. That could be a very interesting thing. We're going to probably have to wait a long time for that. I'm not going to lie. We're probably going to have to wait a long time for that. We're going to be very interested to see here where we continue to go here throughout the night as we continue to really kind of wait on some key votes from key areas here. We're still waiting, and we're going to be looking up along as well on Twitter here as we continue to kind of look at what necessarily is going on across the country as as we continue to see here. We have a question here about a runoff. It's only 50+1. So if you get anywhere above 50% of the vote, that means you avoid a runoff. So if it's 50.1% of the vote, you avoided the runoff. You just need just above 50% of the vote. You don't need like 51% or anything like that. You need just a majority of votes would be 50 plus 1.1% basically to avoid that runoff in Texas. So very interesting to see here, kind of what's going on right now. Very interesting to see here, continuing what's going on right now. Apparently, we are starting to get some election day votes in Bexar County. Apparently, they are continually be favorable towards Cisneros. Again, that's pretty expected in the election day vote there. That's relatively expected in that part of San Antonio. That's certainly expected. Not surprised. But there's a lot of votes there that we're waiting for on right now. So, this is going to be the long one. This might be the long one we're waiting for here on the night. as we continue to look on here. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see right now, and yeah, so that's kind of what we want to see here. Will Cisneros avoid a runoff, or are we heading to a runoff on the 28th? That's going to be kind of what we're really looking for here. I mean, Eric, I think Eric, we're going to have Eric kind of delve into what kind of the dynamics would change in this race if we see Cisneros get the nomination tonight, or what it would mean if we have to wait for a runoff.
Obviously, if we go to a runoff, there's going to be extended campaigning. There's going to be a lot of money spent on this race, I would think. A lot of attention to Cuellar's investigation, a federal investigation. And it'll be interesting to see where that 5% or so that the third candidate in the race is getting, where that goes to. I would still consider Cisneros, if this goes to a runoff and Cisneros is ahead, consider her the favorite in that. But Cuellar's clearly putting up a strong fight here. There's a clear divide between the Bayard County portion, the San Antonio area voters and the Rio Grande Valley voters, and that would kind of be a big conflict if those voters turn out in a runoff. If Cisneros' voters turn up in a runoff, those can be low turnout. We'll have to see, but it's an interesting dynamic, and it would certainly give us something to talk about going forward.
Certainly give us another big thing, especially at least on the Democratic side. Certainly look forward to for that May 24th runoff primary date. That's for sure here. I think we're gonna, if you have any questions for us as well about the Texas primaries tonight, or just elections in general, since we're getting to that time of the night where we're kind of just slowly waiting on numbers right now, we'll take your questions in the chat here on YouTube. You can comment here, and we will try and look for some questions that we have, and we'll try and answer them if folks are at all interested in that tonight.
Yeah, for our Twitter followers, you can switch to the YouTube broadcast and ask them there. I'll be also looking at Twitter if you really want to ask a question, but really we get them more easily on YouTube. It's easier for us to respond to. So
that is certainly correct. But we're just kind of looking for stuff across the nation here. We're just really kind of interested in seeing at least. Can George P. Bush get into a second right now? Yes, absolutely. It's still definitely close enough in that Attorney General's race for George P. Bush to get into second place. It'll be interesting to kind of see. Again, that's kind of another one. We're just kind of waiting on the Rio Grande to kind of report in some areas, because that kind of seems to be where Bush, Guzman is kind of surprising, maybe surprisingly doing kind of the worst compared to some of the, she's kind of, pulling around, third place there, while Bush is pulling relatively close to Paxton. So that might be an area where Bush is doing better. That might be, these are small counties, but that might be an area where he catches up. According to Cincinnati, he's less than 2,000 votes behind Guzman right now in that race. So that's certainly something interesting to see. That's for sure within that race. And actually, the New York Times just put him up right now on Guzman. I think they're just a little bit ahead of us right now, just very barely. But that's certainly something to look at. That's very interesting right now. Mike Collier, the Lieutenant General's race continues to be relatively close for Lieutenant Governor. Again, we're just really waiting on some of these congressional primaries to be decided right now. Hopefully, we'll start seeing some real calls soon on this, because it feels like you should be able to start seeing some calls here on some of these races here as we get to it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're just kind of waiting across the entire state.
One thing I will mention, which is interesting here in the Attorney General primary, is that all of the candidates have won a county so far, or are leading in a county, except for Eva Guzman. Guzman is in second place. Bush is ahead in two counties in Hidalgo County in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, and he's also had one small county towards outside of German Hill Country. Guzman is not leading any counties, but she is in second place. Louis Gohmert is leading in, I think, 6 or 7 counties all around Tyler, Texas, his congressional district, the first district, but he's in fourth. Sometimes it's better to be second or third in every county than it is to be, first in a few and then fourth in everything else. That's one of the lessons for these sorts of primaries is you can basically build your strength in two ways. You can build around a single geographical area, or you can build your strength around statewide. Guzman is definitely doing it around statewide.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing with these statewide runoffs is really interesting here right now is that what is the strategy of necessarily don't win anywhere, but finish second everywhere in these type of races. It's expected that both Gomer and Bush would rally around Guzman and their votes. So, it's going to be very interesting right now. And I think we are apparently getting some results again, potentially soon out of the 28th. We're hearing out of Atacasta County. So hopefully those results are coming in here soon. We don't see them yet on decision desk. Let me check the times, see if they've got them up yet. But apparently those are being reported on Twitter right now that Atacasta has come in with an advantage towards Jessica Cisneros, which that would be a change certainly from 2020, where yes, the Times does have it in a very small amount of votes, very, very small total, but Cisneros wins the early vote there for sure. That is, again, that's a rough one, but again, we're really waiting on Starr, Zapata, and Duval counties. These are, again, counties that went well for Cisneros. That's certainly still watching there, but that's not a good result, I would say, there for Cisneros there in a county he won significantly more in 2020, Eric. That could be the difference here potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a pretty bad performance for him in that county.
Yeah.
That's not what you want to see if you're Cuellar and if you're wanting to make this go to a runoff.
Yeah, that's certainly
that's a fairly large county too in the district. That's it's adjacent to San Antonio, but it's a very Republican county, and it's a fairly large county in terms of population.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's certainly a disappointing result for sure. For Henry Cuellar, that is not necessarily a result he wanted to see. Certainly not a result he wanted to see out of Atacasta County, that's for sure. So, I mean, Eric, I'll push this to you. I mean, what would you consider the 28th then, if it is a Cisneros as the Democratic nominee? What do you think that kind of does to this race then? I want to ask you here.
In the short term, it makes it a very, very appealing Republican target. Cisneros is certainly out of the mainstream for a Democrat in the Rio Grande Valley. She is far more progressive than any sort of representatives usually are in the Rio Grande Valley. She's not the sort of candidate you want running there. On the other hand, she's not exactly a far left progressive in a lot of ways. She's not, to my knowledge, supported defunding the police or abolishing. I think she like the hot button progressive issues she's tended to shy away from, as far as I can tell, while being more outwardly progressive. Similar to Marie Newman in Illinois, where she ran a progressive candidacy, but she also is not calling for Israel sanctions or defunding the police or anything along that line. Stuff that would be more contentious. I would imagine that her social views would be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of South Texas voters that are more used to someone who's more supportive of things like abortion restrictions or gun rights. Would be a problem, for a liability rather than an asset in the district. There's also a lot of San Antonio there, though, and a lot of blue portions of San Antonio that she could feasibly, run a candidacy in. This is still a district Biden won by 7 points. That's down from 19 last time, but 7 points is still a pretty good margin of victory. That's better than he did nationally. So a lot of things that could go there. It also matters the Republican candidate quality, how their candidate ultimately performs in the district. That would also be a significant factor here as well. But it's worth noting Republicans did do pretty well in these districts with underfunded candidates last in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see here, especially I think the idea that you mentioned here of the renewed Republican focus on these districts, which is something that, let's be very honest, we've never really seen here in these districts, in these areas. That's not really something we've ever seen. So that would be it would feel like a big deal, you know. So I'm sorry, I'm getting some news in from back home. It sounds like I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting some news in from back home in Lancaster County. We're holding our endorsement convention tonight, and it sounds like for my open house seat, it sounds like there's going to be an open primary for the GOP nomination. So,
oh wow,
that's a big deal. Mine, it's a Trump plus 28 seat, so that's a big deal that the county party's not endorsing.
very big deal, and it's a big county, Lancaster County, right?
Well, it's part of Lancaster County. You know, it's
Yeah.
It's a part of Lancaster County in the 98th, but it's mostly about 90% of the district is in Lancaster County. So that's my hometown of Elizabethtown. And
yeah. Yep. And just some more results coming in right now from Decision Desk. George P. Bush has taken the lead back narrowly for that second spot. He now leads by 100 votes. That's 100 out of 918,000 votes for that second spot. Actually, now it's increased to 2,000. So Paxton again at 42.5%, Bush at 20.9%, Guzman at 20.6%. Some more counties in South Texas have started coming in. I believe we got some more results in from there where Bush is doing very well. And he is continuing to do well in that region. The Louis-Gohmert wall continues to expand in this old congressional district. I'm actually pretty sure we may see a contiguous group of Louis-Gohmert County stretching down perhaps from as far as Red River, stretching down all the way down from Red River into to his latest county, which is he's leading in Sabine County. So it could be a contiguous wall of Gohmert counties. Of course, he's still in fourth place, so it doesn't really matter. But he does have that regional support from that area of South Texas or from East Texas, which is enough to keep him in this race. He's at 16%. That's not enough to make a runoff in all likelihood, but it's far better than I think a lot of people were expecting him to do in the race. I think people were expecting him to be more of a meme candidacy, but he's actually doing quite well, all things considered, in the area.
Yeah, that's certainly surprising that he's kind of getting stretched down there to that Red River district. I think that's probably maybe a little bit farther than I'd say we probably expected his reach to go. But we've seen this before in these statewide races. Congressmen who get in do really well in their regional area, but then don't really do that well elsewhere, and that's kind of what's happening to Gohmert right now.
Mm-hmm. And in the governor primary, which again, that's been called for incumbent Governor Greg Abbott, Alan West has taken the second place spot over Dawn Huffines. She's now taken about a 600 vote lead in that second place spot, 11.3% of the vote for both of them. Obviously, Greg Abbott is demolishing all competition in this race, but it's funny given the media attention and the candidacy and all sorts of stuff online about Dawn Huffines that he is now in second or third behind Alan West, who was his own political figure in many different ways that has had an impact on several different state parties at this point, arguably not great in any of them. Here's a question. If Texas at 28 Republican primary goes to a runoff, would that hurt Republicans? I don't think it will. I mean, it's going to go to a runoff.
It's going to go to a runoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to a runoff. The leading Republican is like 23% of the vote. So that's going to go to a runoff for sure.
Yeah. So
we're expecting. I'm actually not sure the attorney general race will be called tonight. I don't think we'll be on for it to be called at that point.
Yeah.
But it appears to be very, very close. A very, very close race in that Texas attorney general primary, as expected.
Yeah. We're probably going to look to cut off probably around 11 p.m. tonight, folks. So we're probably going to stay for around another 50 minutes here. And then we're probably going to cut it off around the 10 o'clock mark, I say tonight. So, yeah, so we're probably going to go for another 50 minutes here. But otherwise, it looks, again, which means hopefully, we're all hoping kind of in these next couple of next 50 minutes that we start seeing some real numbers again start to come in here. We've kind of been lacking in terms of for some of the key primaries that we're looking at here. So really kind of really interested in that right now.
Yeah. I mean, 92%. Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody started cracking up there.
Yeah.
So we've got 92% of the vote in the Texas 8 primary. Morgan Luttrell is still up 54% of the vote. Christian Collins at 22.2%. Jonathan Houlihan at 12.2% as well. That's not been called yet, but I would expect the call to come at some point fairly shortly. The amount of votes then are not that many. And given how well Collins is performing, or given how poorly he's performing and how well Luttrell is performing, I would expect that to be called at some point in the near future. Big win for Crenshaw there, for the Crenshaw wing of the Republican Party, kind of establishing his dominance over Harris County politics or adjacent politics. But yeah, very solid performance there for Luttrell, better than expected. If it were to avoid a runoff, which it appears likely to be, can't say until it's been called, but appears likely that will happen. That's a very big win for the Crenshaw candidate or camp. Certainly a very big advantage for them.
Yeah, that is for sure here. Yeah, but we've been kind of been watching this for the whole. I think my answer is kind of going to be same to your answer here, but so far the biggest surprise of the night that we've seen so far. What's kind of your answer on that, there, Eric?
The biggest of what?
Biggest surprise for you so far tonight?
Oh, I would say the biggest surprise has been the Luttrell overperformance. That I don't think anyone saw this coming. I think people saw that as generally being a fairly close race. I think we had heard rumblings that Guzman was running a solid candidacy that could easily make the runoff. We had heard, we had heard about the stuff in the 20th district. It's still being potentially pretty close. We knew the governor was not being competitive in either primary. I think it was generally assumed that the 8th would go to a runoff. The fact that it probably won't is a surprise to me. And it says a lot, I guess, about the sort of online nature of some candidacies and about priorities for voters in terms of what they're looking for in these sorts of primaries. I think, we saw a couple of times last year with Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, where they won contentious primaries and they were controversial. But being controversial does not mean you'll win a primary. Being the craziest person in the race does not mean you'll win a primary. There are other reasons. Boebert won in large part because her primary opponent refused to spend money in the primary. She had unrestricted campaign access.
Yep.
Luttrell is not fall into that category at all.
That's very true.
Yeah. So that's one thing right off the bat. Like, if you really want to go for these sorts of things, you got to be a little bit more careful than just, I'm going to be the crazy, to get the, to kind of cop the line from Thomas Massey, who said that he thought after he had won, it meant there were more libertarians. And then he realized that it meant they just wanted the craziest SOB in the room. Really, they don't want the craziest SOB in the room a lot of the time. It's just, they vote for a lot of different reasons. It could be that, or it could be a bunch of other factors. In this case, it appears voters, wanted the more credible candidate, not the online candidate.
Yeah, and we all do have a question here. I think we'll both answer this right here. But if Beto O'Rourke loses in November, do you think he runs again for any office, Eric?
Ooh, I don't think you could stop him from running for something, but boy, would that be embarrassing. I mean, what would his path be? Would be running El Paso again against Veronica Escobar? Probably not going to happen. Statewide office, I don't think he'd settle for anything less. He could run a Senate rematch for Ted Cruz in 2024. He'd probably get a lot of money. Would he win? Probably not. We saw Wendy Davis. She lost pretty disastrously in 2014. It was a genuinely embarrassing defeat given the amount of time and effort and money spent on that race. To lose by that margin in that year was not worth it. She came back and then she lost again. It could be the same sort of thing with Beto O'Rourke. And also, where would his support base be? He's not. I mean, he's switched his views so many times. He was a progressive, sort of in El Paso. Then he ran an interesting race in 2018. Then he switched entirely as a progressive into 2020, supporting the confiscation of guns, banning churches that don't recognize gay marriages, stuff that's not. You could argue the merits of those things, but it's stuff that's not going to sell very well in Texas. And now he's pushed back on those this time. I
Yeah,
can't say he won't run, but what would his end game be for running again?
yeah.
Rather than taking some sort of cushy position, I don't see him running for a house position, a state house position, or state senator. That would be probably beneath him, or at least he would think so.
Yeah, and I think his issue, especially if he loses bad, if he loses between above double, if he loses by double digits, that's gonna hurt a lot. That would hurt quite a good bit. If he lost by double digits to any future candidacy for a war. Again, Veronica his seat was El Paso. That's Escobar's now. He's not going to primary him. Veronica Escobar. He's not going to run for a state senator, state house seat. Could he run against Ted Cruz again? Sure, but I think if he loses by bad numbers here in 2022, I think Texas Democrats are going to want to start looking elsewhere out.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's not like we don't have other candidates. It is Texas. There's a lot of Republicans in Texas, but there's also a lot of Democrats. There are plenty of other potential candidates they could look for that could be compelling figures statewide. So it would be really a stretch for him to be continuing to do these sorts of races. I would not suspect that to be likely.
That's certainly true. We're kind of looking continually at things here right now. Yeah, I mean, we're just, again, kind of in that stage. We're just kind of waiting for more votes. Kind of just that room right now. Like I said, we expect to tune off at around 11 o'clock Eastern time tonight. After that, we're gonna go to bed. Hopefully we're gonna get some clinching results here soon. But afterwards, it kind of after 3.5 hours on live stream, it kind of gets pretty dull. So we're gonna pop off at 11 o'clock Eastern tonight. But again, we're just kind of still really just kind of looking here again. Most of the key statewide races for governor have both been called in very unsurprising fashion. Those have been called. We're still looking at some key House primaries as we continue to go on throughout the night here. It's just we're in the slog right now. We're back in the slog. We're maybe having a bit of a slower reporting process than maybe we expected. It's going to be really fascinating to continue to see right now. Again, I'm going to elaborate here. We are not calling, but we expect Ken Paxton to be forced into a runoff with either George P. Bush or Eva Guzman in the race for the Republican nomination for Attorney General of the state. We expect that to happen. Not only that, but we also are probably expecting the Democrats to have a runoff for both their Attorney General nomination and as well for their nominee for the lieutenant governorship. It looks like runoffs are going to be occurring there. We're not calling that, but we expect there to be runoffs for those two statewide races for Democrats. Looking elsewhere, it's beginning to continue to grow to look like Morgan Luttrell will not be forced into a runoff with Christian Collins in for the Republican nomination for the 8th district, but we are expecting Democrats to see runoffs in the 15th district to replace Vicente Gonzalez as the Democratic nominee in that toss-up seat there in the 15th district as well. So that's certainly something we're looking at there. We almost certainly expect that to be a runoff there for Democrats, as no one has over 30% of the vote yet. We are still waiting on key crucial results and from key counties in the 28th district, as we continue to wait for the numbers between Jessica Cisneros and Henry Cuellar in that key Democratic primary in the 28th district. We are still waiting for key numbers there. Also, we are still looking at numbers potentially in the 3rd district and the 30th district as well for Democrats, and the 3rd district for Republicans. We're still waiting to see if Jasmine Crockett is forced to run off there in that seat to replace Eddie Bernice Johnson. And we are still waiting to see if Van Taylor is forced into a runoff against Keith Self in the 3rd district as well. We're still very much waiting on both of those seats here. Very interesting times we are certainly living in right now, as we continue to look in right now. We did see some more votes come in from Collin County, by the way, that did cut into Van Taylor's lead a little bit. He's down to below to 1.4% now. With a lot of votes in Collins still potentially remaining according to the New York Times, that's going to be a big deal still that we're looking out for right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had a good question here about state legislature races. We've not been tracking the state legislature so much, but what we have seen, there's some interesting stuff going on. The one I'd seen in particular was the candidacy from Luther. I believe her name's Shelley Luther. It's not going very well. She was challenging an incumbent Republican senator. She's the woman who infamously got in trouble for having her hair salon open, I believe, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the early part of the lockdown, and then tried to leverage that into a political career. Does not appear to be working. There's also apparently some other stuff going on, some weird stuff going on in the Beaumont seat, the VRA Beaumont seat, that could be potentially going to a Hispanic candidate instead of a Black candidate, which is unusual given the nature that it's mostly a VRA Black seat. But yeah, I haven't seen anything especially interesting at the state legislative level, but also we've not been following it that much, so I can't really say too much on that end.
What's the Luther seat again?
Let me look. That would be HD 62.
HD 62.
Yeah.
Let me check here. Oh yeah, that's not going well at all. She's down 62 to 38 with 50% of the vote in.
Yeah, that's very that's not good.
No bueno. Not bueno.
It's also a very strangely shaped district.
It is a very strangely shaped district.
It's not a gerrymandered district, but it is a very unusually shaped district.
That is fair to say. Certainly fair to say indeed. It's been very interesting continuing to watch some of these numbers come in right now. We do want to point out Wayne Christian in the Republican primary for the Texas Railroad Commissioner, as we continue to see votes counted there, continues to be under 50%. That is one that we feel will almost certainly not be dealt with until the morning, but certainly that is something to watch there indeed. As we continue to go on right now, for sure.
And it's continuing to sink lower, actually. It's only at 49.1% now. And then obviously the Attorney General race. George P. Bush has opened up a small 1-point lead for second place. As I mentioned, the Gohmert Wall continues to expand. He is now leading a contiguous block of counties, or almost contiguous. There's one county that doesn't have his votes out yet, but almost certainly will go for Louis Gohmert, stretching from what's the name of the county here? Using it on a tablet, it's a little bit from Newton County, or not Newton County. Basically stretching from Sabine County all the way up to part of the Luther district, or part of the district Luther was running in, Franklin County, I believe. This contiguous block of Louis Gohmert counties. I just find this amusing because it's a geographical region, but it also makes sense. East Texas is kind of different and distinct from other regions of Texas politically and culturally in a lot of ways. And Gohmert has held that seat there for a very long time.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think he was elected in what, 2002, I think, was it? Was it 2001 or 2000 or 2002 where he was first elected? He's been there for almost 2 decades.
He's been there a while. 2005. was when he was first elected to that district. Of course, he's notorious for a number of things, challenging John Boehner for Speaker of the House, voting against the anti-lynching bill, which sounds bad until he gives his reason, which is that it was not tough enough on lynching, that he thought lynching should be a death penalty offense. Surprisingly based moment there, or not based, depending on your views of a death penalty. Also, some other more controversial things that have a racially tinged element, possibly climate change, COVID-19, immigration. Very, very controversial figure in a lot of ways, but also very much in line with the sort of Republican voter that resides around Tyler, Texas, in a Trump plus a zillion district.
We apparently, I'm going to check here, but yes, we've got some new numbers in from the 28th.
Ooh.
Jessica Cisneros, at least on the New York Times, has fallen below 50% with those new numbers in.
Wow.
Cisneros, I'm going to check to see which county these are from. It's one of Duval, Starr, or it is Duval. Duval with 1,200 votes so far goes 67-25. Quaylar. So even with the Atascosa County going down there, that is a good. That I can't deny. That's not a. I'm gonna just have to see how he did in 2020, but that does not sound like a bad result there for Quaylar.
Certainly not. And this is with. Let me see what the percentage of the vote in right now is.
Well, New York Times reporting 58% of the vote is in.
Yeah, DVHQ is also reporting 58% of the vote, although they have a different vote total for Cisneros.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be fairly. They're reporting additional votes compared to what DVHQ has, but yeah, being below 40 or 50% means it would go to a runoff, and if it goes to a runoff, that a lot of things can change. A lot of things can happen in that time period.
Yeah, that's a big one. This is an interesting number. I just think this is kind of interesting to see right now. In the 2018 GOP primary, Hidalgo County cast just under 7,000 votes in the Republican primary. Tonight, with only 77% in still, it's cast almost 10,000.
Wow. Yeah, Republicans have put a lot of effort into the Rio Grande Valley, obviously, but Hidalgo County has been, if not one of the one with the most vocal and active state Republican Party. Definitely, Republicans aren't known for organizing, and if you use that term in particular, but they have done a very good job of organizing new voters in that area and getting new voters into their side. This has been an area that's a target for Republicans, so this would be probably even more than Cameron County. This would be one to really pay attention to.
Cameron County as well. Speaking of Cameron County, they have around 2,300 more Republican voters in this year's primary compared to 2018's as well.
Mm-hmm. And these are large counties. These are counties that have, I believe Hidalgo County has almost 1 million. Yeah, it has 868.
Hidalgo's big. Hidalgo's big.
Yeah, I mean, 868,000 people, and Cameron has another 423,000. These are very, very large counties. If you look at the I'm going to compare directly the governor and the governor race in both, because those are probably the ones that make the most direct sense to compare.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at Hidalgo County, 10,000 votes on the Republican side compared to 24,000 on the Democratic side, that's closer to 2-1 than it is to traditional Democratic margins, typical ones in Hidalgo County. And that's only in one cycle. That's fairly substantial.
Yeah.
If you look at Cameron County, which again is a similar story, Keeps reloading. But yeah, these are the sort of things you want to pay attention to. If we're trying to gauge the future Republican strength in this area, which is expected to increase. I don't think it's expected to have a snapback like some have predicted. Certainly doesn't seem to be voting that way.
Yeah, this is becoming just wait. This is very interesting on the 28th. This is now getting interesting again. This is the type of thing. This is a big deal. This is a big deal if it goes to a runoff. That's a legitimately big deal if it's forced into a runoff here. That would be a legitimately big deal if that happened. That would be legitimately a big deal. And again, that would probably cause a lot of money to be spent here. It was very interesting to see this continuing right now. I would also like to report we do have results from San Jacinto County in the 8th District. By far and away, Christian Collins' best district so far. He's only down by 15 points there, and he's kept Luttrell under a majority of the vote there, with Luttrell winning that county 45-30. The problem is there's only about 2,000 votes left there. Again, if you're looking at the math here, in that 8th District Republican primary, the math continues to look increasingly harder for Collins to force us to a runoff. Basically, the last results of these, election day vote would have to be very negative against Luttrell for him to be forced to a runoff here. Only Harris and San Jacinto have pulled under, and if he continues to do well in the Montgomery County election day vote, that's going to be an issue potentially here in the end. So that's continuing to be something that we're looking at here, folks. As the night goes on, we continue to look at key things across the country here. It just continues to be very interesting as we continue to get more and more of the vote in right now. Again, just continuing to be very different from where we're expecting in some places, it's being what we expected in other places. So, going to be interesting here again. Want to give back a mention to the Texas Railroad Commissioner primary. They were estimating, New York Times estimating about 40% of the vote is in there. Wayne Christian continues to hover around 48% of the vote right now. So, that's what we'd call potentially a problem here, though we are missing Montgomery vote. No, we're not. No, we're Harris County. It used to be Harris County votes. So that's kind of the last main massive population area that we could see here. It's very interesting to kind of still waiting here on some key primaries continuing for the night here. We're continuing to wait, basically, folks. We're going to probably log off here in about 27 minutes after we hit the 3 hours and 30 minutes mark here on the stream. Another one, then you guys will be on your own way. But first round, we want to thank you guys who have come and watched for us here. We've seen growth on both the YouTube and the Twitter platform tonight. So we always appreciate that when it comes to election nights. We know that's a big night for us always, but we always appreciate it. We never deny that. We always certainly appreciate that. That's for sure. When it comes down to that things, that's always something we definitely appreciate when we see on election nights, the support that we get from new people coming into what's going on here at Elections Daily. We always appreciate that. And we continue to be very excited about the type of stuff that we hope to be able to continue to do here, and that we just continue to do in general here within the future. We're continuing to be excited. Again, we ask you to give this a like and a subscribe if you haven't been with us already. And if you would like to be with us more, again, we're going to have a greater recap on Thursday with me, Eric, and Dylan Wade. On Thursdays, we do our normal podcast, Elections Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
On Thursday, we start that at 5. We do that from 5:15 to 6 o'clock every Thursday night. So we hope to see you guys hopefully there as well. Some of you new folks. We've gained almost about we're gaining about 8 subscribers tonight, which is always a plus. So yeah, we want to thank you guys for that, and we welcome anyone who's decided to kind of join in with us as we get closer to and we get more in depth into the 2022 election cycle.
Yeah, we're closing in on 500 subscribers, which is really cool. Obviously, all you guys on Twitter, we have a big support on Twitter as well. We really appreciate you guys. We've started posting our stuff to Twitter now as well. Thanks to our streaming provider, we've been able to cross-stream to Twitter now. So if you're more interested in watching on that, we're going to continue posting our podcasts there. You can find them at YouTube. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all sorts of places. We have them there. You can obviously you can subscribe to us there, like us on Twitter, retweet, whatever you want to do. We appreciate your support and all of you guys for watching, especially with the State of the Union counter programming going on. Needless to say, that's a pretty big deal. But to have people come out for a primary in Texas is pretty cool. We think this is an interesting race, and it's been an interesting night. I think we've seen some unusual results we hadn't expected so far.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think, we look at, and we're still very much looking at that 28th. I don't think we're going to be able to call it here while we're on stream tonight. It's certainly not edging that way, that's for sure. But, we are going to have races. We'll be back here in Texas on the 28th for sure. And as it does look like we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have some key races for statewide for both Democrats and Republicans. They're going to have that key Attorney General's primary. Potentially the Railroad Commissioner's primary could also be that night. And, potentially a Democratic primary in the 30th or the 28th could be heading to a runoff. And definitely a Democratic primary in the key 15th district is headed for a runoff at this point. So, we will be back here in Texas on the 24th with other states. In fact, I'm going to bring up the 2022 primary schedule right now. As because we are getting to that point. It's we're getting to the point where dates are happening. Of course, we're not going to be back here for almost 2 months, but we will be back on May the 3rd, and we do have a very big state on May 3rd. Eric, do you know what state that is that's coming up on May 3rd?
Oh, May 3rd. Is that Pennsylvania?
No, it's very close to Pennsylvania. The great state of Ohio with some very key, as long as hopefully they don't push that back due to the continuing issues they're having to be unable to redistrict the state. But right now, Ohio is scheduled for May the 3rd. That would be a massively key Senate primary, and of course, some interesting House primaries that we would likely to see there as well for that for Ohio. Indiana is also happening. That's less interesting. Really, we want to be watching the first House district in Indiana this year, but we will have and the new 9th district. The 9th district is getting a new Republican representative as well, so that could likely be an interesting Republican primary that night. But otherwise, May 3rd, we start with what is going to be another, long summer of primaries. As I'm going to pull it up here right now, as you guys can see, we basically have primaries every week starting May 3rd. Basically, if my computer will let me go down here, which it doesn't seem wanting to right now, as gives me issues. But basically, from May 3rd all the way to the end of June, we'll have primaries basically every week. Whether that be runoffs or actual primaries, it's a very exciting time. From that 2-month span of May to June, it's gonna be very exciting. Of course, then we take a little break in July, and then in August, of course, we'll be back on for more primaries there as well. We're very excited to kind of just go through this right now. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be an exciting time. We're in an exciting place. We're very excited to be covering 2022 with all of you guys right now, as hopefully we continue to see growth and excitement here going into 2022.
Mm-hmm. I do have some sad news, at least for me personally. The Gomer wall has been broken.
Oh no!
In East Texas, two counties in East Texas, Bowie County, and I believe Cass County, have Ken Paxton in the lead. So the Gomer wall has been broken. Gomer will not win every county in East Texas on a contiguous line, but he could still win a contiguous block of counties. Just these two counties in particular, he has lost. It looks like so. No Gomer wall. On the other hand, Eva Guzman is continuing to fall a little bit behind of George P. Bush by about a 2-point margin, I think, right now. Right now, the margin, Ken Paxton's at 43.8% of the vote. Or no, sorry, that's in Cass County. I look at statewide. Yeah, 42.5% of the vote for Ken Paxton overall in the state of Texas. And then George P. Bush at 21.3%. Eva Guzman at 19.5%, and then Louis Gomer at 16.7%. A lot better than people expected from Louis Gomer. So on that side of things, good performance for George P. Bush. Obviously, there's still time for Guzman to come back, but Bush is actually getting a pretty sizable boost from a lot of these South Texas counties. And he's doing pretty well, for example, in Webb County, Hidalgo County, Cameron County, El Paso County, where Guzman is actually in 4th place. So he's doing pretty well, all things considering right now.
This doesn't matter, but I just think it's a little bit funny. Beto O'Rourke has lost a county. He has lost the 4 Democratic voters in Sterling County, very rural, very Republican Sterling County. Apparently, he's lost that county. So
to someone named Inocenio Barrientos.
Yeah. Excellent pronunciation effort there, Eric.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I'm going to assume that's incorrect. Please correct it if he's not. In fact, he's not even in 1st place. He's tied for 2nd with Joy Diaz.
Yeah.
Who everyone knows who Joy Diaz is. Her thrilling campaign for the Democratic nomination for governor.
I would like to say, just an update here. It seems like more election day vote came in from Bayard County. Cisneros. Cisneros extends her lead a little bit, but it does not bring her back over 50% in the entire race. And now the Times is only saying that there are only 3,000 votes left in Bayard. We're still also waiting on Star and Zapata results.
Yeah, for what it's worth, DDHQ still has Jessica Cisneros at 51.3%. New York Times has her at 49.8%. Both of them claim around 60% of the vote.
I think Decision Desk might be missing the Duval County.
That may be it.
I'm going to check right now, but I'm going to guess that's what it is. Yeah. And it is. Yeah, we've got Decision Desk is missing Duval. The Times does have Duval.
Yep. So that would be why, because it's basically all just missing votes from Cuellar. So again, if you're Jessica Cisneros and you have to go to a runoff by about 0.2%, how angry are you at that point?
That would certainly be
pretty irritated. Yeah, I would certainly be frustrated or irritated or angry to some degree.
Yeah. So, looking at this, again, we only have about 15 minutes left here before we'll end the stream tonight. So we're continuing to look in here at kind of these races here. We've got, again, the Cisneros race, really kind of just the big one to watch right now. Again, according to the Times, she has now been dragged under 50% of the vote after results came in from Duval County. One of those key Rio Grande Valley area seats. And I do want to say we have had some more calls from other groups in some congressional primaries. Not surprises, people like Pete Sessions, Beth Van Dwyne, Troy Nels on the Republican side, and Vicente Gonzalez on the Democratic side have all been called from the New York Times side of things for their primaries, and I believe we're starting to see some of these folks get called for as well in our own Decision Desk HQ primaries as well, where, as they've called for Vicente Gonzalez in the 34th as well. So we're starting to see in these safe counties, in these, well, not necessarily safe, but some of these other counties here, some of these calls are starting to come in potentially hot and fast. I'm going to guess we're going to see a call in the 1st district here soon. Nathaniel Moran continues to lead by a lot of votes here in the race to replace Louis Gomer in the 1st district. He continues to lead by a pretty wide amount. And, the fun thing with some of these safe districts that you sometimes see weird runoffs. We might see a weird runoff for Democrats, it looks like here potentially in the 1st district. But I will want to say that we are seeing some changes in the 1st district as we get away from Smith County. We see some changing of the results, that we see a little bit more diversity for the other candidates in this seat, as you would more typically expect in a super Republican seat like this, in an open seat. But it seems to look like Moran will run away with it, like we kind of expected him to. You kind of go down the lane here. Dan Crenshaw pushes away any Republican primary issue here. Van Taylor still potentially in some trouble, but it's looking like he's going to barely avoid a runoff against Keith Self here in the race in the Republican Party for the 3rd district here. Same goes with some of these other guys. And we keep going here. Jake Elsie pushed back some nonsense from primary challenger he had there. The 8th district, Luttrell. It's growing to look like Luttrell is going to avoid a primary at this point. Decision Desk HQ has I don't know if this is fully accurate. Decision Desk HQ has around they're about 3,000 votes ahead right now of the New York Times, and they have Luttrell at 53% of the vote still. So that's once we kind of get that in, we'll see necessarily where that's fully from the Times. So that's a big change there for sure. You look at, you keep going on the list here. The 16th, which kind of had a weird start in the 17th district. That's almost certainly now Pete Sessions has run away with that now. And, it's just, we haven't really seen any, out of their surprises yet, I'd say. We haven't had any really out of their surprises tonight. No real surprises that we didn't necessarily hear of. The Taylor race, we had heard some whispers there for sure, especially with the candidacy of Self. But yeah, so really, it's the interesting thing where we're surprised by maybe kind of surprised by some of the results we see, but we're not fully surprised by these results for sure. I think that's certainly something to be said. And I think Eric would probably agree with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing down here, well, we're going to see a Republican runoff in the 28th for sure, between Cassie Garcia and some unnamed Democrat, some unnamed second candidate so far. Like I said, we're just yes, and got those votes in now in the New York Times. Hooray! Yeah, it's looking increasingly like those votes came from Montgomery. Still very good for Luttrell, over 55% of the vote there, as long as he holds that. And barring some weird numbers from Harris, I don't see this happening. So it's starting to really feel like we're going to see Morgan Luttrell avoid a runoff, which is probably the biggest surprise we've seen so far tonight. That we're going to see.
And it appears, according to New York Times at least, that Beto has lost a second county.
Oh, there we go.
County. Yep, Rich Wakeland has apparently won Loving County.
Hey, Loving County Democrats. Hooray!
Yeah, the one of the more funny. Are they still a thing? The Loving County Democrats. I haven't seen that Twitter account.
I don't know.
Twitter
I
account.
never followed any of that nonsense. I just thought Loving County was a meme because I didn't think any
Yeah.
Democrats lived there. Yeah.
But yes, it would appear, and they're saying 100% of the vote is in. So Loving County does not apparently love Beto O'Rourke.
How many? Yeah, how many? The four. Yeah, at least. Yeah, Rich Wakeland. Well, I think they were weird in the race with. I forget what it was, but they were weird last year too. They voted for some in the Senate primary. They voted for some.
Ooh boy, Beto is doing very badly in Maverick County. Beto is at 61% of the vote in Maverick County.
Oh dear. Again, it doesn't really matter in the widespread of things across the state, but that's
interesting to look at.
That's what it is. It's just interesting to look at. Interesting numbers.
Yeah. I think I may have to work on a map of this, compare the over-under performance for both Republicans and Democrats for governor. I feel like there may be some interesting stuff there. And yes, it appears the Gomer wall has completely broken down now. There is a third East Texas county that has voted for Ken Paxton. Actually, four of them. So four of them. The Gomer wall appears to have come to an end, sadly.
I want to say Cisneros is now barely back over 50%. More votes came in from Guadalupe, which is pretty heavily going for her at 73 to 18% for Cisneros. That put her back over the lead, over the 50% mark. That's probably the thing that you folks are going to watch here. Want to watch here for the rest of the night is whether or not Cisneros holds on to that. So that will be the thing to watch for sure.
Yeah, New York Times has her over 50.1% now, over 50% now. So,
yeah. Yeah, so we are very nearly there on our night. We've got about 8 minutes left here. So, Eric, before we kind of start into the wrap-up phase of this, anything you'd like to say?
I thought this was an interesting stuff. Really, we want to see how that 28th district Democratic primary goes. But overall, I think in a lot of ways, some of these races went the way we expected them to. Some of them didn't. But interesting night of primaries regardless. Some interesting results. Obviously, I'll be crunching the numbers on these once we have full data in and get some stuff back to you guys hopefully tomorrow or throughout the week. A lot of competitive races, a lot of interesting things. And actually, Wayne Christian, the railroad commissioner, has only done 48% of the vote, 48.4% of the vote. So continuing to go down on the vote total there. Really, really good performance for everyone that's not him.
Yeah.
I will mention, I mentioned this in the chat that I'm in, but Beto O'Rourke, I mentioned the Maverick County thing, doing very poorly in that. If I were a Democrat, that would concern me. The level of underperformance among Democratic primary voters in the Rio Grande Valley is not like anywhere else in Texas. There's nowhere else in Texas where he's consistently underperforming by 10 to 15 points. He's winning 93% statewide, only 60% in Maverick. That is really, really not great. If you're long-term looking for your hopes there, that's one of those counties that's more rural. That's one you want to hold long-term. And if you're only getting 60% of Democratic primary voters in a one-way race, that's concerning, I would think.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a positive outcome, I would say, right there. That's certainly, I mean, look, like I said, in the realm of the primary, it doesn't matter. but it's something that it's interesting to look at here. Does that worry translate over to the general election?
Mm-hmm.
That would be kind of the key thing to ask.
And in a lot of these counties, Democrats are going to receive more votes than Biden received in 2020. I know Kennedy County is already that way. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people here who are still voting Democratic primaries.
Yeah. It's gonna be really interesting to see here. What's going on. Like we've said continuously, the Rio Grande Valley is gonna be something very interesting to watch here as we continue to move on here within the state of Texas. It's be very interesting to see kind of how it acts and where kind of the things move. Where things go and how things move. It'll be very interesting to see here, and yeah. As we kind of get to wind down this night, it was nice to be back on. Certainly fun to see results coming in again. Obviously, primaries feel a little bit different than general elections. That's just kind of the basis of things. So we haven't had a primary election in a long time. At least I feel like that. But we're certainly getting back to and I just want to include Jessica Cisneros has increased her lead in Atacama County. She's at over 56 to 41 there right now at Atacama. Let's put her 50.3% to 45% over Henry Cuellar.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you should give them to us in the next few minutes because we're going to hop off here at 11 o'clock. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. We really appreciate your support for our content, what we're doing. Couldn't do this without you. Couldn't be where we are without you guys. So really, just thank you guys for everything. You're great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sure. It's been really great to again be back here. It's been really awesome. Hopefully, again, as we get into May and we kind of spread out our time a little bit better, hopefully we will see us kind of get a little bit more interesting. Hopefully a bit more of a wider cast. Hopefully Kraz will be back here as well, and hopefully we'll add in a little bit more of some more interesting characters as we get in here. We're always looking for people. We're always looking for new writers. So if you're, a young adult looking to write, do some, you have some ideas and you decide you want to write them down, you have some analysis, apply. We have a LinkedIn link that you can apply to, and think about trying to write for Elections Daily. It's a good time, good place. And hopefully when we see you guys again in 2 months on May 3rd, we will be back here once again. It's I believe that's actually 7 p.m. Eastern time start instead of the 8 p.m. one we saw here, but I actually believe this one is 7 p.m. Start. But either way, I want to thank you guys very much once again here. So again, for a very great start, we saw some really awesome viewership before the State of the Union kind of took away, I think, a good chunk of our viewers. But certainly early on, we saw some really excellent viewership here. So thank you all very much. And yeah, we'll see you back here May 3rd. Eric, I think probably he's looking for something here. He's got something. Eric, I see the look on your face. What you looking for?
DDHQ is now the outlier on. They've now put. I believe they just tweeted this out that Cisneros is back below 50% now. I'm going to make sure this is correct. Looking at the Elections Daily website here, yeah, they have her at 49.93% of the vote. About as close to 50% as you can get. Remember, it's got to be 50% plus one vote to avoid the runoff. Right now, she is just barely off that threshold. 29,962 votes, and she has 13,461 of them. That's very, very close to what you need to do to avoid the runoff. So yeah, they're New York Times does it different. They have Cisneros, I believe, above 50% now, but on DDHQ, it's 49.93% of the vote. So I'm
Mhm.
going to keep track of this. I'll be going to sleep for a while. So
Yeah,
this is interesting stuff to me. So
that's for sure. That's for sure. Eric, this is your stuff, so you have the final words tonight.
yep. Yeah, again, thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate your support. Like and subscribe. Do whatever you feel comfortable doing to support us. We appreciate it all. You can keep track of the election results throughout the night on electionsdaily.com. We have a article there. Or that we also have Joe's analysis. So you want to compare what Joe said to what has happened. I think his words held up pretty well, as it usually does. You can do that. Obviously, obviously, you can follow us on Twitter. We got our handles right here. This will be on YouTube as well. If you want to watch us again for some reason, you can. It'll be on YouTube. All of our content as well. So yeah, we really appreciate it, guys. Thank you again. We'll be keeping track of this throughout the night. I'll be posting updates on Twitter if anything interesting happens. If we get some calls. But yeah, thank you guys again. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in a couple months.
Yeah, thank you guys.